green card. Not in this city, but it's not true everywhere else. But the thing is, what's good about them making a mistake is that you won't forget ever again. You'll know forever. So sometimes there's something to be said for mistakes. So we'll wait for, I guess tomorrow's gonna. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, and even those of you who aren't ladies and gentlemen. As you know, I'm Alan Wernick. I met you this morning. For those of you who are here, I am going to be talking about hot topics. And I do that every year. I try to talk about some of the issues that are most in the news or most concerning to our immigrant community, and give you some of my thoughts and views about them. And of course, thoughts and views are not facts all the time. I will give you some facts as well. But I want to start by reading one of my favorite short quotes that I actually keep on my wall in my office. I have a shorter version in my office. And it's from Thomas Paine, who was a writer and hero of the American Revolution. He wrote, "These are the times that try men's souls." Of course, in those days, they didn't say men's and women's souls. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. And in a much shorter version, in the immortal words of Jimmy Cliff, the harder they come, the harder they fall. So today, these are the topics, these 5 topics are the topics that I am going to discuss. The overview, raids and rights, where are the courts on the Muslim ban, dealing with DACA and DACA travel, what's happening with temporary protected status. Some of these things and some of the issues that I'm going to raise will either have been discussed this morning or will be discussed in more detail this afternoon. My role here today is to just put some of the things that you're learning today in the context of these issues, these 5 issues. So let's get started. So I am cautiously optimistic about the future of immigration policy in the United States. And I'll probably say this more than once in my talk. You can't take on everybody at once. So one of the problems the Trump administration has is that they can talk about how they're going after this and going after that, and they're doing some very bad things, but they can't do everything bad that they want to do all at once. The 2018 elections, in terms of whether there's going to be immigration reform, are going to be key, because I think there's substantial support in the Republican Party for a generous immigration program. It has always been thus. Those of you who are old enough to remember or who have studied the issue will know that in 1986, President Ronald Reagan, the father of modern conservatism, signed a law that was the last great legalization program in the United States. So it was a Republican who signed that law. So what that means is that given the right conditions, we could have immigration reform. We almost had it in 2013. There was enough Republicans in the House of Representatives to support it, to have passed it, but the Speaker refused to bring it forward. So it is not impossible, even under a President Trump. And if you think about his own personal history, what are the 3 industries where immigration is so key in the United States? Of course, immigration is key to our whole economy. I think, if you read about it, you'll see that. But there's three particular industries where it's problematic if we don't have immigration. The service industry, the agricultural industry, and the construction industry. Well, the guy's got 2 out of 3 right there, right, with hospitality and construction. And he's got a winery, although I would never drink his wine. I'm not sure that's that important to him, but I'm not so pessimistic. Here's what I want people to understand what can be done and what can't be done. President Trump and his minions cannot, for instance, change the rules for who qualifies to become a U.S. citizen. That has to be done by Congress. He cannot take away the right of a U.S. citizen to petition for a spouse, parent, son or daughter, child, or brother or sister. He cannot do that. Only Congress can do that. So there are a lot of things that he can't do. He would have to take the changes. He would have to change the statute. And I don't think he's doing very well in Congress right now. So I'm not too concerned about a lot of legislation of that nature that changes the basic rights and benefits. I am concerned that we're going to see legislation, and we'll see what the Democrats do about it, legislation that will try to make it harder for people who have done things that we would consider less than appropriate for them to do, make it harder for them to be able to stay in the United States. That is something he may try to do. He may try to increase the penalties for people who are here unlawfully, the criminal penalties. But in terms of the fundamental benefits that are available to individuals, he cannot change the law. He can, however, he and his people, of course, we're talking about the Department of Homeland Security, can change the regulations. So working backwards from the statutes. That typically takes between a few months and sometimes even more than a year. So for instance, the fee waiver regulations. They could change that. They would have to post. They propose a regulation in the Federal Register. There would be comment period, but in the end they could change it. But again, they can't change the rule that says if you've been here 5 years, you qualify for citizenship. If you're married to a U.S. citizen, you qualify after 3 years if you've been living with that U.S. citizen spouse. They cannot change that. Policy they can change also. So, for instance, they could change the naturalization exam, for instance, right? Make it harder. But fundamentally, people who qualify for benefits now, they should apply for those benefits. Qualify for a benefit, apply now. In my column in the New York Daily News, every Tuesday and Friday, by the way, I read it online, I need the click-throughs. And you can follow me on Twitter at @awernick. That helps too. Look, you know, if you don't promote yourself, no one else is going to. Thank you so much. Viv always does, yes, of course. So, people should apply, but I was getting letters that were saying, you know, should I apply for my son? My son is a derivative citizen. He got a citizenship. Should I apply for a passport? I'm afraid because of Trump. I'm married to a citizen. Should I apply for my green card? Or should I not because of Trump? No, people should apply. Now's the time to do it before it gets bad. Right now there are limitations. The courts and the Congress have limitations on what the administration can do. So I'd say that now's the time to do it. I talked about the prospects for immigration reform, but that's a key thing. And the people are doing that. I mean, that's why so many people are applying for citizenship. I don't know if you read, but citizenship is substantially up, okay? Now, the red cards. You're going to learn about know your rights. But one of the problems about knowing your rights is asserting your rights. Those are two different things. We know, for instance, that we have a right not to speak to a police officer without an attorney present, but it's very hard to do that. For the average person, or even for the not average person, even for an attorney, to be confronted by an authority figure who's either through cleverness or through creating fear in you to not speak to that person, to assert your rights. So some very clever people came up with these little red cards. You have one in your packet. And what we found is, what some people have found is, by handing the red card over, it's in Spanish and English, the government officer, the ICE officer, has now noticed the person is asserting their rights, and they will abide by it. Now, you'll learn later that typically ICE comes to arrest people with what's called an administrative warrant. That doesn't give them right to go into your house. That doesn't give them the right to make you answer questions. That doesn't give them the right to make you give them their name. If they have a judicial warrant, which they never have, it's different. They can go into your house, and this little red card's not going to do much good. So they may come back later. People should know that. But I'm really pushing the red card because all this know your rights thing is very frustrating to me. I've been doing this for way too many years, and I've given know your rights trainings to way too many people. And people talk to immigration. They talk to immigration. It's really, really hard. So you can reproduce these cards. I'll have you get more. There's some in your packet. And when you go for the for the call-in, we'll give you more information itself about how people can get them. So the other thing is that what's going on is that when President Trump got elected, a lot of people thought there was going to be these big dragnet raids. I never thought so. It's too hard. It's too expensive. You need cooperation from the local. Can you imagine trying to close down Queens Boulevard because you're raiding some factory out there and having to deal with the NYPD and Mayor de Blasio and all our friends in city government? Very, very difficult. I don't see, and in any event, they can't deport that many more people. So what they're doing is they are targeting quote-unquote criminals, people who, the same people that Obama targeted, by the way. Obama targeted two groups of people. People who were deportable because of their criminal record, and people who they called abscondees. Those are people who are ordered deported, but who never left. Abscondees, they call them. So it's not true that Obama didn't deport people who were not criminals. That's not true. The difference between Trump and Obama is that if in the course of arresting and detaining an abscondee or a person with a criminal record, they come across an undocumented person who is in neither of those two categories, they will detain that person. They will detain that person and try to deport that person. And the person has certain rights that they can assert in deportation proceedings. But people should, to the best they can, go about their lives. But if you have, like I wrote in my comments, stay away from criminals. You should do that anyways, right? But you should know, people should know, if there's a criminal alien in your family, that's a risk to you if you're undocumented. You may decide to take that risk, but you need to know that. If there is an abscondee in your family, and you're living with that person, you have to know that's a risk. But if you're not hanging out with abscondees and people with criminal records, I think you're pretty safe, especially in New York City, but I think pretty much across the country, all right? But again, that's the main difference, the only difference that I can perceive in terms of arrest, detention, and deportation between the Obama policy and the Trump policy. I think that Trump's plan is pretty clear. He wants to scare as many people as possible to discourage people from coming, and for certain people that are like out of work or having a hard time in the United States or they broke up with their spouse, maybe they'll go back to their country of origin. So that's basically the tactic, because he cannot deport people. There aren't enough judges, there aren't enough government attorneys. The deportation apparatus of the United States is pretty much ground to a halt. It's very hard to deport people, again, except for the abscondees. And certain people with criminal records, they can detain for long periods of time at very high bond or at no bond at all. And so many of those people are leaving. But we don't want to encourage or participate in that fear-mongering. Like I said, I'm constantly reading these articles about people who, they're a mother of a U.S. citizen and they're being deported. But if you look in the background, in almost every case, they either have a criminal record or they're an abscondee, the same as Obama. I'm not saying those people should be deported. I don't think they should be. But don't make it seem like it's a Trump thing. It is not a Trump thing. It's a Trump thing and it's an Obama thing, right? Okay, good. People seem to be listening. Good, I'm getting it. The Muslim ban. So, the Muslim ban. You know that the courts have enjoined or stopped the Muslim ban. What the Muslim ban did, it was supposed to prevent individuals from then 7 countries, now have been reduced to 6 countries. Those 6 countries are Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. They used to have Iraq in there, and then they figured out that, you know, that didn't really make sense, did it? After all, we pacified the country. Yes, it was a joke. At least somebody laughed. So the Muslim ban has been enjoined. That means that it's not going forward. But what it purported to do is to prevent the issuance of visas and the entry to the United States, the first one, of individuals from the 7 countries. The second Muslim ban, and that included permanent residents. Under the second Muslim ban, they took out Iraq and they took out permanent residents. So if you're a permanent resident, a green card holder, even if you're one of these 6 countries, even if the ban were to go into effect, you can leave in and out of the United States. If you have, I'm just telling you this in case the ban goes forward, I don't think it's going to. If the ban goes forward and you have a valid visa in your passport, you can travel in and out of the United States, even if you're one of those 6 countries. If your visa expires and you need to get a new visa, you're not going to be able to get one. All right? So that's what the ban does. Now, so the Muslim ban is enjoined by the courts. And I just want to say one more comment about that. People say, what do you think? What do you think? I think that the Supreme Court is going to uphold the lower courts on the Muslim ban. That means enjoin the Muslim ban, and Bush is going to lose. And why do I think that? I mean Trump. What did I say? Bush, Trump. Sorry, thank you. Bush didn't do so great either, in my humble opinion. I think Trump is going to lose, and here's why. You know, I teach a course at Baruch College, Immigration Law and Policy, and I teach the Mandel case. The Mandel case is a Supreme Court case that talks about what powers the president has in situations like this. And if you read the Mandel case, you would think, well, the president's going to win. The president's going to win. Why is he not going to win? Because the Supreme Court justices read the same newspapers we read. And they know that this Muslim ban is just a hustle. It's a fraud, that it's racist, and it's against the Muslim religion. And so I don't think the Supreme Court is going to want to go through history and have their children go to college or go to school and have their brothers and sisters at the cocktail party or Thanksgiving have to defend this kind of racist crap that Trump is pushing. So I'm very, very optimistic. I wouldn't be surprised if it was even better than 5-4. It could be 6-3, but we'll see. I'm not really a constitutional law expert, but I'm very optimistic. And again, that's why. And if I had more time, I'd tell you the same stories about the history of our laws that I tell my students about how many times in history public pressure and public sentiment has impacted the court. You know, the court is supposed to be neutral and impartial and follow the Constitution. Nah, they don't do that. What they do is, they do what we all do. They look at the Constitution and then they think about, well, you know, like what's going on really? What's really happening here? And I don't think they think the Muslim ban is fair. So what we're telling people is that even though I'm very optimistic, you know, if you have a visa, you can travel abroad. But what you have to be careful about, if you have to travel abroad and from one of the 6 countries, you're going to need a new visa. So even though there's no Muslim ban, that doesn't mean a consular officer at a U.S. consulate can't treat you unfairly. And if he or she does that, you're going to be stuck abroad. So I am discouraging individuals who are here legally from these countries from going abroad unless they have a really good reason to do it. In other words, you're not going to go to France on a romantic weekend in Paris on your honeymoon. If you have a sick mother, that's different. Then you go. I say go, we'll try to get you a visa, we'll try and get you back. We had 4 people stuck during the Muslim ban. When the courts enjoined it, we got them all back here. I'm saying we, meaning CUNY. Okay, good. So I told you I'm optimistic about the long term. People should travel okay, here's a poll question. You know what to do. You've been through this. If the courts uphold the Muslim ban, permanent residents from the targeted countries will be barred from entering the United States. If the courts uphold the ban, permanent residents, that's correct. The Muslim ban does not apply to permanent residents. And again, it goes back to my thesis. You can't put the muscle on everybody all at the same time. All right? Good. The answer is no. Very good. You're listening. Future of DACA and DACA travel. I don't think DACA's going to end soon either. Same thesis. You can't take on everyone at once. You have 750,000 people with deferred action for childhood arrivals. Over half of them are employed. They're integrating in society. They have a lot of friends. I think DACA's not likely to extend. People have extensions. They should go for it. There's no reason why they shouldn't. New applications, I say go for it unless you have a criminal record, but again, if you have a criminal record, you're going to see one of us before you apply. Travel abroad, I would say only for humanitarian reasons or for the brave and fearless. You know, there are people traveling abroad for study. I'm recommending it for short periods only. But it's a judgment call, and I think it's best if the person sit and talk to one of our attorneys at Citizenship now or in the area where they are before they make that decision. Advanced parole, okay, now those of you interested in TPS, listen to what I'm going to say about DACA because the same rules apply. If you enter the United States illegally and you travel abroad with advanced parole, which is permission to travel, and then you are in the category for an immediate relative of a United States citizen, you can interview here for your green card. Your illegal entry will have been forgiven. So people who have DACA or TPS should travel abroad with advanced parole, even if it's for a day. I'm talking about people who entered legally originally. So Johnny crossed the Mexican border illegally. He's been here for a while. He has DACA. He falls in love with a U.S. citizen. If he gets advanced parole, travels to Mexico for a day, comes back, makes a legal entry, he can live happily ever. He's going to get his green card at 6 to 8 months, live happily ever after. All right? The same thing if Johnny has a U.S., well, I don't know, get married, live happily ever after. That's saying a lot. I take it back. Let's say Johnny has a U.S. citizen son or daughter who's 21 years old. Same thing, TPS or DACA. Goes abroad for one day, comes back, has made a lawful entry, gets a green card, 6 to 8 months. Okay? And pretty cool, huh? Yeah. Yeah. But remember, it's only for immediate relatives of United States citizens, and those are people with people qualifying. Well, there's a few other categories, but it's mainly for people who are the spouse, parent of a 21-year-old, and unmarried child under 21 of a U.S. citizen. So the spouse is the most common going to be with the DACA cases because they're in the cohort that many of them are getting married. I think they need to socialize more, though. Okay, very good. You know, one of the things, those of you who are still in school or planning to go back to school, laugh at the professor's jokes. It's going to, I can assure you it will help your grades. Haitians. Haitians is the toughest one. It's tougher than DACA because there aren't as many Haitians. There's 50,000 Haitians. The key thing about the struggle for Haitian justice, I think we can win it. It's about color. It's about the fact that thank you. I'm good. I have 5 minutes. Good. Oh, I can relax. It's really about color because, you know, the whole thing with Haitian TPS, and if you study the history of the Haitian community in the United States, you know, the Black Caucus in Congress had been complaining for many, many years about the fact that Haitians were not getting equal treatment to other nationalities. And when the earthquake hit like this, we knew, those of us who knew the issue knew that Haitians were going to begin a temporary protected status. And I think that given how unpopular Trump is with so many sectors of his society, to really piss off the black community in the United States, again, you can't take on everyone at once. I think there's very optimistic, but it's going to take a lot of political pressure. It's just a political question. We can talk about all day whether Haiti can accept the 50,000. Has it advanced? Has it not advanced? We know it's the poorest country in the hemisphere, maybe the poorest in the world. We know there's a cholera epidemic. It's not a good place to go to. People shouldn't have to go there. Let the people stay. It's only 50,000 people. It's a political question. It's up to the political leadership. And particularly if the Democratic leaders in our country, Democratic Party leaders in our country really push this issue, we can win it. So that's my lesson on that. The same thing about temporary protected status, advanced parole. If the person came here surreptitiously, entered without inspection, I got a number of Haitians come to Canada. They get to Canada, not so much Mexico. Some come through Mexico in more recent years. But before 2001, 9/11, a lot of Haitians would go to Canada and then they would come through illegally from Canada somehow, or they'd be waved through. If people, or they'd be hidden in trucks, whatever. If a Haitian gets advanced parole and it's automatic for Haitians, they should go out of the country. They should come back. They made a lawful entry. If they're immediate relative, they qualify. So we're really encouraging people to do that. And again, the way it works is that if you're an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, and all this, by the way, who can adjust status, that's the term for interviewing here, who can adjust status is discussed in Chapter 5. So you should take a look at Chapter 5 and look at it carefully. Now, next question. Poll question. Those with DACA should not apply to re-register. Should not apply to re-register. Oh, I wouldn't apply now. That Trump, he's going to deport you. You don't want to give him your new address. You don't want to give him your new address. You don't want him, people, the answer is, no. It's a poorly worded question, I apologize. But the point is people with DACA should re-register. That's the answer. If people call you and say, I've got DACA, should I register? You have to answer this way. It's an individual decision. I cannot guarantee you. People say, can you guarantee me? When I was a private lawyer, they'd say, can you guarantee me you're going to give me my green card? I said, I can't guarantee you. Only God can guarantee, and he hasn't told me about your case. So I can't guarantee for you. Okay? Moving along. By the way, I will be around all day, so if you want to talk to me about something that I haven't addressed or that you want to follow up later, and of course we're going to have a terrific question-answer panel. Okay, finally, poll question. Citizenship now rocks. Yes, you bet. All right, thank you so much.
That is a tough act to follow. The one thing he forgot to mention was that on July 15th, we will be back here for our annual Citizenship Application Assistance Day, where we always call it our mega event. We're going to be trying to assist about 400 people. Those who call the call-in and appear to be fairly eligible to apply for citizenship will get transferred over by you guys to our RSVP line, and they will get a further screening and an appointment to come to that event. So you will be receiving a link to register for this. Closer to the call-in, it's July 15th is a little ways away yet, but keep your eyes open for it. Now, we are going to go a little bit more in depth with Know Your Rights and how to prepare for worst case scenarios. Not the most fun topic to discuss, but pretty important and gives people a very practical idea of how they can help themselves or advice they can give to friends and neighbors. To speak to you is Carmen Maria Ray. She's the Deputy Director of the Immigration Intervention Project at Sanctuary for Families, and she is in the process of being awarded a pro bono award for her service to immigrants, not just in New York City, but across the country. She's really active with helping people in detention and the No Ban JFK movement. So here she is, Carmen Ray.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. And thank you all for being here. A couple of caveats. First of all, that was completely undeserving praise. But I get that we've all had lunch, and I get that we're all sleepy. And I get that this is not the most interesting part of the training, which is why they left it to me, because I won't be hurt if you don't laugh at my jokes. All right. Okay, so let's get started. this is what we're going to talk about today. First of all, we're going to talk about potential new enforcement priorities by the federal government against immigrants in the United States. Who are they prioritizing for deportation? Then we're going to talk about know your rights if you encounter a non-citizen, which is another word for immigrant, right? Someone who's not a citizen of the United States is subject to immigration laws, period. That's everyone. So if you encounter a non-citizen and they have questions, how do you advise them of what their rights are if they encounter Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE? How do you prepare? How do you tell them to prepare themselves in case they encounter ICE and are unable to remain in the United States? What steps should they take to ensure that their family and belongings are safe? And then just some thoughts on how to allow them to find the appropriate type of help in their communities to be able to assess their immigration status and their potential ability to obtain legal status in the United States. All right, so show of hands. Actually, give me a little panel things. Raise your green panel if you think that all non-citizens are subject to deportation, potentially. All non-citizens are potentially subject to deportation. All right, that should be, everybody's panel should be up with the green little thing. All non-citizens, that means anyone who was not born in the United States, who did not derive citizenship, or who did not otherwise naturalize in the United States is potentially subject to the US government, either just putting them into removal proceedings and removing them, or removing their status, stripping them of immigration status and removing them. That means that, for example, we have situations, which is why you guys are so important and which is why having people who are well-trained doing citizenship applications is so important. We have individuals who have been living in the United States as lawful permanent residents for 30 or 40 years who do an oops and then suddenly find themselves before an immigration judge without a way of protecting themselves from deportation and permanent banishment from the United States. Okay, so the answer is everyone is potentially subject to deportation, which means potentially any non-citizen is at risk of removal by ICE. It's at risk of having ICE knock on their door and pick them up, put them in the detention facility, and try to remove them from the United States. Now, what used to happen, what was the case at least during the second half of the Obama administration, I mean, really always, but specifically the Obama administration really pushed this, was the government has, estimates vary, but generally the agreed upon number is about 11 million folks who are without immigration status, and then another couple of 100,000 who have immigration status but are subject to having it revoked. The government has to prioritize who gets deported and who gets to stay simply because they don't have the resources to deport everyone. As it is, the Department of Homeland Security is the best funded federal agency in the United States. Mostly that's their immigration units that are very heavily funded. And that really comes out of the idea that suddenly, and really this has only been in the last 15 years to 20 years, the US government has decided to categorize immigrants as a threat to the United States. That is not historically how we saw immigrants in the United States. But more recently we've come to see that after September 11th, we created the Department of Homeland Security, heavily funded it. But even then, with all the resources that we're throwing at this federal agency, the number of potential people to deport greatly exceeds the number of agents and judges that are available to actually handle these proceedings. So the government set lists of priorities, and during the Obama administration, the number one priority were clearly people who were terrorists or who were national security threats, and then people who had committed crimes that the government deemed to be serious and subjected them to deportation. But really, people who had never come into contact with immigration authorities before, who were just here without immigration status, they were really not at risk. In fact, the government policy during the Obama administration was that even if ICE officers came to a house looking for a specific person who was a high priority for deportation and encountered other people in the home who had no immigration status, they were not going to act against those people. They were there just to pick up that one person who was a threat, take them out of the home, and put them into removal proceedings. They weren't going to touch anyone else in the home. That's not the case anymore. The new administration has eliminated all prior existing removal priorities. and has, to some degree, established new ones. The ones on the screen are the new ones. This is really concerning for us because, as you'll note, people who simply have been charged with a criminal offense, but who the courts have not actually convicted of a criminal offense, are now suddenly a priority for removal from the United States. Anybody want to be brave and tell me why that's an issue for lawyers in the United States? I mean, aside from the immigration consequences being terrible. You haven't been convicted in the United States. You're innocent until you're proven guilty. It's a basic constitutional concept for us. We have Law and Order telling us this every day. But not for the president. So suddenly the shift has been really dramatic, and it leaves us in this world where we're not really sure what to do in certain cases. So these are the people that really should be the most concerned about immigration enforcement. The issue is that there's also been the shift now that if I shows up at a house or at a workplace looking for one specific person, now the policy is they pick up everybody, right? So the question really for us is how do we advise individual clients of what their independent risk is? Because in this current climate, the answer is, yeah, potentially everyone is at risk of removal. These folks are a higher risk of removal, but if you're encountering immigration officials and you are deportable or have no immigration status, we can't guarantee that they're not going to fail to exercise discretion and put you in removal proceedings, okay? If anybody has any questions, just raise your hands. All right, so of particular concern for us, outside of that of the population that was listed in the previous slide, are people who cannot establish that they've not been physically present in the country for 2 years or more when encountering an immigration official. And that's because there was a program that was created in 1997, actually, called expedited removal. And the program, expedited removal, has been in use since 1997. It's actually the way that the United States deports the most people. But since 1997, although the government has discretion to use this program against any individual physically present in the United States who cannot establish that they're a U.S. citizen or that they've been granted asylum or refugee status and cannot establish that they've been here for over 2 years, the government has limited its use of the use of expedited removal to border areas within a certain area of the border and to people who cannot establish that they've been in the United States for at least 14 days. So we've had this program, it's been in use. The worry that we have now is that the government will, in fact, as they've threatened to do, expand this program across the United States. You can imagine that in New York City, where nearly 50% of the population is foreign-born, I mean, I wasn't born in the United States. Do I now have to walk around with evidence that I've been in the United States for 2 years or more? Potentially. It hasn't happened yet. But this is one area of concern for us moving forward. And we're going to address some preparation that we can advise immigrants to do in case this expands. We also are concerned because the government is very, very concerned suddenly about smuggling. And if in one of the executive orders that was discussed by Alan earlier, the government actually highlights that parents need to be stopped from smuggling their children into the United States. Now, here's the real issue, right? We have a population of immigrants in the United States who came in the 90s, potentially. There's been no real revision of immigration law since 1997. And in 1997, it was a really negative revision of immigration law that made it nearly impossible for people, once they violate immigration law in some way, to be able to get status. So we're dealing in 1997. That's the last big revision. The Immigration Act itself dates back to the 1960s. 1960s, it was a whole different world back then. I wasn't even alive in the 1960s. I'm pretty sure Alan wasn't alive in the 1960s. I'm never going to get to talk here again, am I? So you have this kind of outdated immigration system, and people, especially who came in the late 90s, came in because there were jobs available in the United States, and they needed to eat. I mean, I'm talking for my clients. Maybe not all people did that, but most of my clients, that's why they came to the United States. Now what they did is, because they were coming in to a world where they had no immigration status potentially, or they weren't 100% sure of how that process was going to work, or maybe they weren't going to stay in the United States, they left their children behind. And they figured that eventually they'd be able to get immigration status and reunify with their children. But there's been no revision to the immigration law to allow them to do that. Because normally, for years, forever, traditionally we've done amnesties every decade or so. Not anymore. So we have families who've been separated from their children for decades. Can you imagine, those of you that have children, having to not see your kids for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? They grow up without you. So what families are forced to do, because we haven't kind of in realization, the law does not follow kind of people's experience, right? It's not logical at this point. So what people are forced to do is to bring their children in by other means. Unfortunately, that is smuggling. That is aiding an individual to enter the United States illegally. And so the administration has decided that in order to stem this practice, so in order to keep parents away from their children, they're going to heavily penalize parents who engage in this behavior, no matter what their reasons are. So we are concerned about parents, and this is really common. This is what my parents did to bring me to the United States, who facilitate by some way, either obtaining false documents or bringing kids in illegally over the border, who facilitate their children's entry into the U.S. Okay. We also, specifically for people outside of sanctuary cities, and honestly, even in New York, if you've been convicted of a certain 170 crimes that the mayor will not protect you from ICE because of, but especially outside of New York City, and that's really the 5 boroughs of New York. Like, do not go out to Suffolk, don't go up too far north in New York State. We are afraid about collaboration between ICE and local law enforcement. So how many of you have heard of secure communities? Okay, that's pretty good actually for general population. Secure Communities was a program that the Obama administration started and then eventually realized was horrible and stopped. But basically what it did, that program and 287G agreements, there's kind of a broad language for it, but what those programs do is that they have local law enforcement, so your local sheriff, your local police department, enter into these agreements with ICE where they will basically share any information about individuals that they stop. So what we've been seeing a lot, especially upstate, is people who are stopped for things like driving without a license or a broken taillight, who the police officer, when they stop them, will actually ask about immigration status. And then they'll take them into the precinct and then they'll call ICE. And ICE comes and picks them up at the precinct. So we are concerned about individuals. And my general rule is you do not leave New York City. Do not leave New York City. No one should leave New York City. But really, that's why our property prices keep coming up, right? All right. Can immigrants still travel? Can non-citizens still travel? Well, all of us can travel. If you're like me, you get stopped every time you come back into the United States, and they're very nice to you at secondary inspection. All of us can still travel, but the one thing that we do want people to be aware of is, because at the point where you are between countries, so before you've been through inspection at the airport, you are kind of outside to some degree, depending on your immigration status, the protections of the Constitution of the United States, right? So think about it. We all know that border lines are contiguous, right? There's no actual lack of space between Canada and the United States. But intellectually, you kind of have to think that there's this kind of road in between the two countries, and that once you step into that road, neither the Canadian Constitution nor the American Constitution covers you. So what does that mean? It means that the government has really broad search power. Right? And it makes sense to some degree. Do we want the government to be able to ensure that the person coming in is not a threat to the United States? Yes. But when you travel, the government can search your electronic devices. And trust me, I have argued this up and down with them. They can search them even if you're a lawyer. They can search your private client databases. The general advice we give is, please just get yourself a burner phone to travel internationally so you don't have an issue with them searching your private information. But otherwise, turn your cell phone off and tell them that you're not giving them the password for the phone. Otherwise, if they ask you for your devices, they will go into your devices and download the information off of them. And they can do that. And, you know, it's a nebulous area right now. It's being developed, but I wouldn't risk it. And it means that for any immigrants that are traveling, you want them to password protect their electronics, or not bring their electronics with them. You want them to make Facebook profiles private. You want them to make any social media private or delete their accounts. I can tell you for sure that ICE, CBP, USCIS, actually anytime that you encounter immigration at this point, they're checking your social media presence. And they will use your social media presence to question you and then potentially deny you entry to the United States. So all the young kids in here who are, have posting pictures of them like about how great marijuana is, please don't, or make them private. It'll make everybody a lot happier. We have seen cases where the US government has denied admission to individuals because there's something in their social media that suggests that they've engaged in behavior that the US government can deny them entry for. Yep? Okay. So, another thing that's really important to know when you're dealing with immigration and customs enforcement is that they lie. They can lie. Not all of them lie. I'm not saying every person that works for immigration and customs enforcement lies, but immigration officers, when they come to someone's house looking for them, or they come to a place of employment looking for a person, can lie about who they are and why they're there. And they often lie in order to gain entry into someone's home specifically. So just because someone says that there's something and need to talk to you about something doesn't mean that you have to believe them. Generally, the onus is on that person to prove to you who they are. And that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind. Because this is what actually happens with ICE, in New York at least, especially in home searches. ICE officers get to the office between 4:30 and 5 a.m. They generally leave the office around 5:30. They try to get to people's homes anywhere between 5:30 and 7:30 to catch them before they go to work. They show up at my house at that time, I'll be half asleep. I'll be completely kind of shocked by the fact that someone's knocking at my door, and I'm likely to open the door. Because if somebody's knocking at your door that early in the morning, you think it's an emergency. So they take advantage of that. So it's important to tell individuals that generally ICE, when they're coming, they're doing raids early in the morning. That's their general practice. And it's important that if somebody knocks on your door, you have to stop yourself. I don't care if you put a sign on your door that says, do not open door without a warrant, but just, they have to be aware that they might be lied to. ICE usually uses stratagems like, oh, we're just looking for John Smith, something happened to his car downstairs. Or, oh, we're just police, we wanted to talk about to this person about a report that they made last week. Or, hey, we're looking for your neighbor, we'd love to just talk to you, can you just open the door? No. All right, generally the rule is, if ICE wants to get in, they have to show you a warrant. That makes sense, right? Same rule as for police. If to gain entry into somebody's home, they have to get a warrant signed by a judge. ICE usually walks into someone's home with a warrant, but it's an ICE warrant. It has no legal value. It's a warrant, it's a piece of paper that is just signed by an ICE officer, a supervisory officer, that sets out that they believe that this person is not a citizen of the United States, and so is an alien from the United States, and that they're looking for them. And that, in ICE's mind, gives them the right to detain someone. But it does not, very clearly does not, give them the right to enter someone's home. For that, they have to go to a judge, not an immigration judge. They have to go to a judge, and get a proper warrant. They have to show cause as to why they need that warrant. I can tell you in New York, I think last year, 3 judicial warrants were issued to ICE. 3. They detained thousands of people, which means they had the right to enter 3 people's homes. Everyone else let them in. So, the problem that we encounter is that I'm about to talk to you about a lot of constitutional law. The problem with all of this is twofold. first constitutional law, like these provisions, put the onus on the individual, right? It's not ICE that has to do this. It's the individual that has to protect their rights. So what we're really saying, and this concerns a lot of us immigration attorneys, but what we really have to advise people is you kind of have to do this. And I know it's really hard because it's going to be 5:30 in the morning. You're going to be petrified for your kids. And you probably, like most of us, have been raised to follow authority. But we're going to need you to protect your rights. So it's a very difficult thing to do. But it's the second problem, which is that if that person doesn't do this, then we have no means to argue that ICE did something wrong. Now, these are not fail-safe mechanisms, by the way. Right? So I'm going to walk you through what an individual would have to do to protect themselves from ICE, but they're not fail-safe. Even if an individual says, I'm not letting you in my house, I'm not going to open the door, even if an individual says, you are not allowed to search me, even if an individual keeps completely quiet with ICE, ICE may very well still detain them. ICE may very well still take them into court, and we may argue that the person should be released because ICE violated the law by not seizing them anyway, entering the house anyway, violating their 4th and 5th Amendment protections. But the judge may find that, yeah, sorry, too bad, so sad, the person is still subject to removal. Okay? But that said, the warrants that they walk with are these one-page warrants. They don't have a seal, and they're not signed by a judge. So that's really the things that you need to keep in mind. These are generally the broad differences between an immigration warrant and a judicial warrant. If they have a warrant, a judicial warrant, they can walk in. If they have a judicial warrant, they can break your door down and come into your house. That's totally fine. They have these battering ram things that just break into your house. They don't need your cooperation. So the general rule is, you person at 6:30 in the morning, you're going to get a paper slipped on your door. ICE is going to come knock on your door. You're going to try to open the door, but you're going to remember, no, I shouldn't open the door. I had this sign up on my door that says, do not open door. I'm going to ask them, which is what you should do, ask them to slip the warrant under the door so that you can read it. But let me be honest with you. Majority of my clients, for one, don't speak English. A good percentage of my clients, at least, don't read. So it's a lot to ask them to do that. So instead, what I default to is, it's the cost of the door versus your detention. Don't open the door, whether they have a warrant or not. If they have the right kind of warrant, let them break the door down. They have every right to do that. But it's the best way to protect yourself against inadvertently opening the door to someone who doesn't have the proper warrant. Okay. But that's very easy for me to say, right? Because I'm just chilling with you guys. I don't have ICE knocking at my door. So if ICE does knock at your door, and if ICE does if you do inadvertently freak out and open the door to them, you should, and you do have the right to say, you do not have the right to enter my house. They're probably going to enter anyway once you open the door. That doesn't mean you don't have the right to say, no, really, you don't have the right to enter and you do not have the right to search my house. You should do that. Doesn't mean they're not going to do it. So we also generally recommend that folks who don't have immigration status keep documents that confirm that they're not natives of the United States outside their home. Why? Can somebody tell me why?
That way ICE can get to them and confiscate.
Confiscation is definitely an issue. But more importantly, what does ICE have to prove to put you into removal proceedings?
That you're not a U.S. citizen.
How do you know whether someone's a U.S. citizen or not? Right? Can I tell you how often I go into court? And the only reason ICE knows that my client is not a citizen of the United States is because my client handed them over their Jamaican passport? Don't do it. They might search, and once they have the evidence, we're then in the defensive. Then we're before a judge, and we can't control what happens. So the easiest thing to do is just don't keep documents on yourself, don't keep documents in your home that confirm that you're born outside of the United States. Okay? That said, if you have documents that establish that you do have immigration status, then please keep them in your home, that's fine, and carry them on your person. Otherwise, for those people, we really, really heavily recommend that they get themselves a New York City ID. Because the New York City ID program, since December, no longer maintains information about individuals' place of birth, but also on its face has no information about where you're from, which means ICE can't use it to prove you're not a citizen of the United States. Also, we recommend all those of you who are citizens of the United States go out and get NYC IDs, because that increases the pool so that it's no longer kind of one of those things that they can use to believe that someone is a foreigner. Okay. We kind of went over this. Yep. Okay. So, just to recap, if ICE shows up at your door, what we tell non-citizens to do, you tell them to slip the warrant under the door. They can only come in. You only have to open the door if they have a judicial warrant. But really, the best advice is let them knock the door down. Yeah? And then once they're in your home, you have to be vocal about what they don't have the right to do. And the reason why is because we want to be able to put you on the stand if you end up in removal proceedings and have you testify about what you said to ICE and how they violated your constitutional rights. In public, it's a little different. Well, I'm not going to ask you that. I'm going to say how many of you have been detained by the police, but I'm not going to ask you. But it's the same as if you were detained by the police. So if the police stop you, or if ICE stops you on a street, they have to have cause to detain you, right? What they can't do is they can't look at you and determine your immigration status. Otherwise, nobody would know I'm not an American. So what do they do to determine that you are potentially subject to immigration law? They ask you questions or they racially profile you. Either way, they have to be able to have probable cause for arrest. And so if you don't answer their questions, you're generally safe. So this is how you respond if an ICE officer stops you. And they're generally, by the way, ICE dresses in regular clothes. The guys, they're usually men, some of them are women, most of them have military background. They carry guns, and they're wearing bulletproof vests with ICE on the back. The vests are blue, and it usually says ICE police, and they're wearing jeans, right? So these guys don't dress in suits. They're gonna stop you in the street. You're gonna think they're gonna be undercover police officers, honestly. But they're ICE, and they're gonna want to ask questions. And so what you say is, why am I being stopped? Am I free to go? That's it. Am I free to go? And you keep on saying, am I free to go? And if they say yes, you leave. You walk away. You just walk away as fast as humanly possible and go hide somewhere and call someone to pick you up in a car, right? And if they say no, then you say, I want to talk to my attorney. And then you shut up. Yeah? I'm sorry, you had a question earlier that I didn't answer.
I wanted to mention if you can also video record them as they enter the home.
Very good point.
What they should do on the street, because I had a couple of my friends actually did say a couple of months back when they were leaving to work during that
Yep.
time, they didn't realize that.
Yep. So video is, it depends on who you talk to. So here, I'm gonna give you the middle of the line approach. It's totally fine to videotape them. You are completely within your rights to videotape them, both in your home and outside. And actually, videotaping them might be really helpful if we can get our hands on that videotape that demonstrates that the person did invoke their constitutional rights and those were not respected by ICE, right? Here's the thing though. Remember I said these people are military trained and they're carrying guns? So what do we not recommend you do? Make any sudden movements or escalate the situation. Because they will shoot you, and they shoot to kill, okay? So, I'm not kidding. So, what we'd say is, ask them, if you're in your home, say, I'd like to videotape this. But don't suddenly go into your, in your pocket so that they can think that you might have a gun. Outside as well. Just make sure that they can't somehow believe that you're reaching for a weapon.
Going back earlier, let me not point at borders. You say that in this country,
excuse me, we're going to leave questions for the
Oh,
end.
sorry.
One, please, just right.
Hey, writing it down?
until more guilty. Is it because they're not a U.S. citizen, so that doesn't apply to me?
No, it's unfortunately because the Constitution of the United States applies to everybody. The Constitution of the United States applies to everybody who's physically present in the United States, period. But immigration law is not criminal law. And so under immigration law, you're kind of in the United, if you're not a US citizen, you're in the United States at the will and whim of the US government. So the US government gets to set out the parameters under which they can choose to try to send you home. Now, I don't think that's legal. I think they're really kind of stretching their power when they're detaining people because they were accused of a crime but not convicted of a crime. I do think that that it will not stand judicial review. That doesn't mean we can stop them from doing it. It means they have to do it, we have to have a good case, we have to bring it before the right judge, we have to appeal, and hopefully we'll end up with a good decision that stops them from doing it again. Okay, so review. Everyone has the right to stop ICE from entering into their home. Everyone has the right to not open their door to ICE. Everyone has the right to refuse ICE from searching their home. Everyone has the right to refuse ICE from searching their person. Everyone has the right to refuse to provide information. Now, it's a little fuzzy. The one thing that's kind of like up in the air, New York in certain circumstances does require you to give your name to law enforcement. We have a name yourself law, but let's put that aside. Generally, we tell people to just shut your mouth and ask to speak to your attorney. You have the right to not sign anything, right? And that's a good one for people. And it's something to just keep on drumming to immigrant communities because people just don't know and they sign what's in front of them and they believe the officer who tells them what they're signing and they should never do that. During the Muslim ban at JFK, we had a bunch of cases of people who were long-term lawful permanent residents in the United States who signed documents renouncing their lawful permanent residence and were deported as a result. Because they were told that unless they signed them, they weren't going to let them in anyway. So they signed them. No, don't sign anything without talking to an attorney. Talked about this. Before you sign anything, you should ask to speak to your attorney. They will try to pressure you to sign those documents. Don't fold. Once you fold, there's very little we can do. You have to understand what papers say. They don't have to provide you papers in your language. So it's important that you say, I'm not signing this, okay, without talking to an attorney. And it's also important, and I mean, my clients are terrible at this, it's really important you keep copies of anything they give you. Do not throw papers away when they come from immigration authorities. It's often the only way, those papers are the only way to recreate what happened and what was done against you so that an attorney can assess what your potential relief might be. Okay, the only thing you should tell them, if ICE shows up at your house to detain you, or they try to stop you on the street and try to take you away, you again should not confirm that you're born abroad, you should not confirm your nationality, you should not confirm prior immigration status, none of that should come out of your mouth. The two things that you should say to them, if they're true, is you should tell them if you're the sole caretaker for a child, right? So if you've got a kid and there's no one else to care for the kid, you're a sole parent, you should let them know that. Or if you have a severe medical condition, you should let them know that as well. Now, those are the two remaining categories under which ICE, at the time of detaining someone, can make a determination as to whether or not to detain them. That's the kind of thing that we call de-escalating a situation so that potentially you may be able to get away without being detained. Talked about this. Again, as I mentioned, if you do have immigration status or you have proof of a pending petition, you should carry that on you, only because it might be a way for you to be able to defend yourself if they stop you and try to take you in from being taken in. Now, that's what happens if ICE shows up at your door. And those are the ways that you can try to protect yourself from ICE actually being able to pick you up. But here's the reality. We've seen cases where the non-citizen does everything right. ICE shows up at their door, the non-citizen refuses to open the door, ICE doesn't have a judicial warrant, so they have to walk away, and the non-citizen gets to stay inside their house. What ICE has done is they've literally just waited downstairs. And they'll just sit there, with the idea that sooner or later you're gonna have to leave your house and they can pick you up. Okay? So it's not an absolute. Usually we tell people you can at least use those hours find yourself an attorney, make sure that your kids are okay, make sure that you've let people know where you're going, and that you've kind of gotten to a place where sooner or later they're going to pick you up. But you're at a safe place to go into detention. You've done everything you can to prepare for it. You should have an emergency plan. If ICE is out to get you, most likely, sooner or later, they will. So, should your emergency plan contain? You should keep documents that are important for purposes of immigration, like your birth certificate, your children's birth certificate, birth certificates of any U.S. citizen family members that may be able to serve as a qualifying relative. Where a friend or a family member can find them, but really most importantly, not in your house, but somewhere where a family member can have access to them, because your attorney is going to need them in order to fight your case. You should make sure that you have a place, and what we were telling people is to walk at the beginning when we kind of weren't sure if the government was going to expand expedited removal. We were telling people to walk with a computer thingamajig. I just showed my age. A flash drive. With a flash drive that contained documents that demonstrated that you were in the country for at least 2 years, right? So that if you have kids, those, you have leases, those, really any relevant document the government has to look at. So anything you have, receipts from purchases, anything that shows that you've been here for 2 years. Have an attorney, and you have a way of contacting an attorney in an emergency. If that's not possible, have a trusted family member or friend, preferably one that has immigration status, and have a way of contacting them even if you don't have your cell phone. Because what can happen, and this happens, is you randomly get picked up by immigration, and they transfer you immediately to some detention facility somewhere in God-forsaken Alabama. Anyone from Alabama? No? Okay. I was looking for a state, sorry, like some place that's very rural, where there aren't any attorneys, and they let you don't have the right to make phone calls, and because you have to pay for phone calls out of detention. So you could just be in the detention facility and your family doesn't know where you are. So it's important that because usually what the detainees can do is that they actually borrow call time from each other. So it's important you have one phone number memorized for someone so that you can let them know where you are and where you're being detained. Try to save up some money. Generally, if you're picked up and you're detained, in some cases, we can argue that you should be released after a certain period of time in detention, but it's often under bond, which is the equivalent of bail, but for immigration proceedings. So we tell people, try to save up some money just in case that you get the possibility of bonds and you're able to pay it. Think about your finances. People have homes here, they have businesses here, they have money here. It's important that you think, what are you going to do in case I'm detained? What is going to happen to that? Do I have an ATM? Do I have a bank account? Is my money in a bank account that I can access internationally? Do I have someone who has the right to make legal decisions with regard to potentially the sale of my house if I'm deported, so that I can get that money transferred to me in my home country? Right? What's going to happen to my kids? Have I made decisions about money that may need to be going to their education, that I want to go into their education and keep in the United States? It is asking people to face their worst fears, which people notoriously avoid. It's why I bet you money 80% of you don't have a will written. But it's really, really important for immigrants who are at risk of removal. And again, these days, potentially anyone without immigration status is at risk of removal. There is a form for people who have children where both parents are potentially at risk of removal. If both parents are on the birth certificate and both parents and one parent has the right to remain in the United States, custody of that child will automatically be transferred to that parent. But if for some reason parental rights are terminated or there's just no parent available, you really should think about where your children are going to go. So a couple of things are important. Parents should be told to fill out the blue card at their children's school. That's the next emergency contact information, with the contact information of people who are reliably going to be in the country, who can pick up their children in case the parent is detained, just so that the kids don't fall into ACS custody. Because if they do, then getting them out of ACS custody is a nightmare. And then also, the parents should look at completing this form, which I think is available on the family court website. And in completing this form, they can delegate basically their parental rights to someone who can take temporary custody over their children in case of their removal. If you're looking for someone detained by immigration, Section 9 of your manual, people will call a hotline and they'll have all kinds of questions. The manual is an amazing resource, but there is the process of finding someone who's in detention is outlined in the manual. The only issue is that the detention hotline is sometimes a little delayed, so it can take up to a week for an individual who's detained to make it onto the hotline so that you can find them. All right, so let's say an individual, and I'm going to shorten this a lot because I know I'm only got like 4 minutes left. So let's say an individual is potentially at risk of removal. They probably want to talk to an immigration attorney. They can come to CUNY. CUNY's great. It's a great resource. They can walk into one of the CUNY centers and try to talk to a CUNY attorney. CUNY folks are probably going to kill me for having said that. But if they want to get a private attorney, which is also viable if they have the means to do so, they should, and there are ways that they can find a reliable immigration attorney. The best people to go to are either immigration attorneys, individuals who are recognized to be able to practice immigration law because they were recognized by the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is the appellate immigration court in the United States. The people that are not good to go get legal services from, notarios, who have no legal knowledge, no required legal knowledge to be a notario in the United States, unlike in countries in Latin America. They do not have the authority to give legal advice. And individuals who have no legal training but purport themselves to do so, which, at least in my family, it's pretty much everyone in my family tells me how to practice law all the time. You can easily find, there's a section in your manual that has instructions on, that has resources where to refer people. It will be really helpful during the call-in. You can also refer to any of these websites. The American Immigration Lawyers Association is kind of the place to go for someone who practices immigration law. People should be warned to not give money without seeing a contract. Because it's common in many different communities. First of all, immigration cases are really expensive, right? So people don't blink an eye when an immigration attorney asks you for $25,000 to handle your case. I work for free. I don't have a lot of money. But it's common. It's an expensive type of law because you have to pay for this attorney to handle your entire case. So they don't blink an eye. But you kind of have to have something to rely on. You can't just hand over money to an individual. Make sure that an individual gives you, an attorney gives you a written contract. Make sure you understand that contract. Make sure that you maybe talk to your friends and family, or maybe even another attorney about that contract, so that you understand your rights within it. You should never be charged for immigration forms. Those are available on the immigration's websites for free. You should not be charged for getting on some wait list. That should not be happening. There's no need to do that. No one should be signing blank forms because the immigration forms that you sign, you are signing under penalty of perjury, and the contents will be used against you by the government. So you just never want to do that. You want to make sure you understand and can confirm that the information on the forms is correct when you send them to immigration. So no attorney should ever be asking you to sign a blank form. No one should be keeping documents from you or anything like that. If individuals are calling because they're concerned about their attorneys or their legal representatives, refer them to the hotlines. Immigration fraud is huge. And you want to make sure that the proper authorities are investigating it so we can stem it as much as possible. So these are the resources to be able to do that. If you're looking just to chat generally about immigration, or they're concerned about immigration enforcement, these are the folks that they should call. The Office of New Americans runs a hotline in all languages from 9 to 5 every day. All right, I'm going to go over for 2 minutes. I'm going to do your case studies with you. Okay, everyone read that, right? That's really short. What should Paolo do? Should go back? Darn it. I don't know how to do that. Oh, I have to read it. Okay. Paolo hears a knock at his front door around midnight. He looks through the blinds and he sees 3 agents wearing ice jackets. What should Paolo do? Should Paolo Open the door right away. No. Why are you waving your red things if you think no? Paolo should take the red card. Paolo should slide the red card under his door. Paolo should walk away from his door and go back to bed. All right. Oh. Well, that's the answer. Okay. Now, one of the agents, as he's back in bed, he hears the agent call out, "We have a warrant! Open right now, we're gonna bust this door down." All three agents are out there with their guns and their bulletproof vests, and they're banging on the door, and they're aggressive. And Paolo's really afraid that his wife and his baby are gonna be woken up, or maybe they're all gonna be picked up and taken away, or maybe he's just gonna be embarrassed in front of his neighbors. What should he do? Should he open the door because they have a warrant? Very good. He should ask to slip the warrant under the door. Or better yet, he should just walk away from the door and go back to sleep. And let the neighbors think whatever the heck they want. But he's not gonna do that. But at the very least, he should ask them to slip the warrant under the door. Because remember, unless it's a judicial warrant, ya ain't coming in. Okay, so they slip the paper under the door. He's very nervous, he's shaking, he picks up this paper. They're still yelling and screaming, and he's freaked out, and what should he do? He should think, a warrant is a warrant. I've got to open the door to these screaming guys who I'm really scared about. Right, very good. He should take his time, he should read the warrant. He should understand whether or not it's a judicial warrant, likelihood it's not a judicial warrant. Or again, best thing he can do is turn around and go back to bed. He's not gonna do that though. All right, very good. The best way to determine whether it's an ICE warrant or a judicial warrant is to look for a judicial signature. But again, the best advice you could ever give someone is to let them bang the door down. Okay, so then Paolo, a couple months go by, Paolo's walking down the street, he's just chilling, he's leaving his job. He gets stopped by immigration officers. The officers are there, there's usually day laborers in the area. Plainclothes officer walks up to him and asks him to see his ID. What should Paolo do? He's carrying his foreign passport. He should not do, but he's carrying it. He keeps it in his backpack. Should he give it to the immigration officer? No, very good. He should say, "Why am I being stopped? Am I free to go?" And then the officer says nothing and says, "No, I want you to tell me, I want you to show me your ID." He says, "Am I free to go? Am I free to go?" You say nothing other than, "Am I free to go?" And since that officer, unless he's discriminating against you or he's got a photograph of you in front of him that shows that you are in fact the person that he's looking for, has no probable cause to arrest you, eventually he's gonna say yes, and you're gonna walk away as quickly as humanly possible and never walk by that street corner again. All right, you guys are on coffee break. Thank you all so much.
Who needs a cookie after all of that? Thank you. We are going to resume back again at 3:30. The atrium right over here is where coffee and a snack will be available. If you guys have questions for the afternoon session, please make sure you get a blank card from us and pass it to one of our staff members so we can be sure to have it answered. Can you enter? To your left. I was like, no.
No, password for the it's not.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
working.
I know that. It's just-
Do you know how to get to it though? Oh, to the page. But the email thing is not working.
Which? Jennifer is going to be walking around with some more index cards. If you have a question and you want to write it down, grab some cards from Jennifer, and if you have a question that you'd like to turn in, she can take that too. And again, we're going to save the questions until the last two presentations are over. Thanks.
Okay.
We were trying to get to like the CUNY email, but not through John Jay, just like the central administrative office.
Oh, is there anything craving like you said? No, it's on the screen.
I mean, I can. Here we go. You're all set. The whole auditorium will know your business.
No, like.
Don't you just know what it is? Like,
No, it's not a.
I thought it was like on the website, and you just have to have a password to get it.
Is it
once you-
capital CUNY?
Yeah, I think it's all caps. CUNY.
All right.
Okay,
got it.
perfect. So yeah, you can.
what's the best way to get from PowerPoint to?
Oh, why don't you come back?
Basically just,
Quick and
yeah, after you full
Yeah,
screen this,
it's only
animations,
Or you can just hit that.
just escape.
Yeah, cool.
Are you not doing an introduction?
That did not work. Oh, wait, that's the one.
No.
Yeah.
First.
Oh, wait, no. It's not.
Oh, it's not from the beginning. Oh, you're right.
You're almost there. Go back.
Okay. And then this.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Yeah. So.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Monique Francis. I'm the Deputy Director of CUNY Citizenship now. Zach and I are here to talk today about the policies and procedures, or the tips and procedures for the 2017 call-in. So first, some logistical changes and a major update. This year's call center is not at Gutman Community College. We'll be right back here at John Jay. We're going to be upstairs on the first floor. So please make sure you do not go to Gutman. Please make sure you come right here. We have some veterans who've been with us for more than 11 years. So a lot of people will try to go to Gutman, but we will be right here from June 19th. The call center opens up at 10 a.m. and we close daily at 8 p.m. We have 3 shifts for folks to choose from. 10 to 1:30, 1:30 to 5, and the killer shift that we are asking a lot more people to sign up for is the late shift from 5 to 8. So if you're already registered and you have some availability, especially for the Spanish-speaking volunteers, we are asking for some more people to sign up for the late shifts, please. When you get your thank you email from us, you can actually email us back and let us know if you have some more availability and you want to sign up. Just a quick reminder, today is the deadline for you to submit your bios and your photos. This year, the Daily News will be publishing the bios online, something that they have not done for us in the past, so you'll get to share this link with your friends and families. People can check you out online. Alrighty, some things about the call-in and overall our goals for the week. Basically, for the last 14 years, the major goal for the call-in is to make sure that we provide immigrant New Yorkers, or right now around the country, with access to free or low-cost legal service providers. As an immigrant, I know, when I came to this country, I did not know that there were a lot of agencies around New York City that you can actually just go in and get connected with an immigration attorney for free. And we want to make sure that people know about these services and do not go to notarios or unscrupulous providers. We want to make sure that we're providing reliable referrals, especially to authorized immigration service providers. And also, this is an opportunity for you as volunteers to give back to your community, to be a part of this bigger movement to, you know, help immigrants and to show your support for immigrants. So, some of the do's and don'ts as volunteers. I'm the sheriff and the deputy dog for the week. We want to make sure that we're only providing immigration information and not advice, and we're giving people directed referrals to the providers through immigrationlawhelp.org. And we're not referring people to private attorneys who have their own businesses or to for-profit organizations who are going to charge people. If someone does call and they want to get connected with a private attorney, we ask you to make a referral directly through the New York City Bar Association or to the American Immigration Lawyers Lawyer Search. These are the two referrals that we're giving out for private attorneys. Please do not, I will emphasize this as well, do not give people specific attorneys. We have a number of attorneys from AILA who are volunteering with us. We have a number of attorneys from Bloomberg and Capolino and other law firms who are volunteering with us. Please do not give people's private or business cards out. That is one of our don'ts. So, some of the volunteer guidelines that we have. So again, we're going to be stressing this a lot. We are only providing immigration information and not legal advice. We have a zero tolerance policy against making private referrals. We will actually ask you to leave the event if we do find that you're actually making referrals either to a private attorney or yourself as an attorney. That is totally, no pumps about that. Please do not take the names of the callers or their phone numbers or any personal information for the callers. We give you a notepad, take general information, immigration information from them. You're supposed to be triaging the calls. We don't want to see numbers lying around or that type of stuff. And also, when you registered to volunteer with us, we did give you a copy of our volunteer confidentiality agreement. And we also gave you a copy of the policy that we have on the unauthorized practice of law. Please make sure that you read through those before Monday when you come to us. Alrighty, so here's an overview, or what we call your role as the call answerer for the week. When you do come in on Monday or whenever your shift is, you'll get an orientation from a staff member or hopefully another volunteer to tell you, one, how to operate the phones, how to operate the tablet device that we have, and all of the materials that you have, including the training manuals. We'll have the paddles. Today is the practice run for these paddles. Make sure that you utilize them during the week. Alrighty, we're asking you to read the script that we give you. It's a standard script. Hello, my name is such and such. You're calling CUNY Citizenship now. I want to remind you that I'm a volunteer. I'm not an attorney who's going to be providing you with legal advice. We're asking you to also help us with making referrals to the owner hotline for any kind of immigration fraud. If the person told you that they were scammed by an attorney or an notario, to make those referrals. And we also want to make sure that you're managing the expectations for the callers. So, some of the frequently asked questions. Over the last 14 years, resoundingly one of the highest number of questions that you're going to get asked is, how do I become a U.S. citizen? More than 50% of the calls are on that one topic. I'm here, I've been here 1 year, I want to become a U.S. citizen. And the second most one is like, how do I get a green card? And you have to be able to like triage the issue for the person and give them that information. In this current political climate, we actually anticipate that the next two questions that you'll probably get the most questions on is, I'm here undocumented, where can I go to get a general consult or a legal screening? And what do I do if I'm stopped by ICE or if I'm arrested by ICE? What resources are available to me? So now let's review the materials that you have and the materials that are going to be available to you on Monday. I keep on saying Monday, but it's 2 weeks away. I know, I want this event to come. Alrighty, so things you do before Monday. We've been talking about. Oh, thanks, Jen. Things you do before June 19th. Alrighty. You are going to get an email at the end of today's training that says thank you for coming, and in there it will have all of the resources that we gave you today. There is a getting started document that we constantly refer back to. It's basically an overview of how to answer the phones, how to transfer a call, let's see,
How to put it on hold.
how to put a call on hold, those kind of basic stuff. Please make sure you review the document thoroughly. And then your homework for the next 2 weeks is to go through the training manual. Take it on the train, read the chapters, familiarize yourself with what's in each chapter. And then Ken and Michelle are going to come up later on and give you more about the online resources that we have. So, some notable changes that we've made in this year's training manual. Tamara worked really hard on this. Chapter 1 is only on immigration terms. There's a whole bunch of USCIS, DHS, ICE, all these acronyms that you should familiarize yourself with. We don't ask you to learn all of them, but the basic ones, USCIS, ICE, DHS. The section on naturalization has been updated. We have a new chapter on being prepared if you are arrested or stopped by ICE, or if you come in any contact with immigration, and also for undocumented immigrants, what they need to do right now to actively start making steps towards, preparing if they are stopped by an immigration officer. The chapter on document renewal, and also the chapter on how to get copies of your immigration records also has been updated. And in the event of technical difficulties with these tablets that we don't have yet, there is a whole section on the paper version of the referrals. So we have in the back of this quick, easy referrals that you can make. Okay, turn over to Zach.
All right, thank you, Monique. So when you actually get to the call-in, make sure you're on time for your shifts. The shifts, again, are from 10 a.m. to 1:30, 1:30 to 5, 5 to 8 p.m. Try to arrive a little bit early because you'll get a mini orientation on the day of from your station supervisor to go over a lot of what we're talking about today. And you want to get settled in, have a chance to look over your getting started guide before you actually start picking up the phone. So the next step when you get to the call-in is you pick up the phone. You have a script to follow. We ask that you don't deviate from the script. Citizenship now, good morning, good afternoon. I want to remind you, I can provide you with information, but I'm not an attorney and cannot give you legal advice. How may I help you? So that's very important that you specify that you're not an attorney, you're not there to give them legal advice. A lot of you are attorneys, right? And you're gonna come to us and be serving as volunteers and answering the phones. We still ask that you follow the script because we're not asking you to act in the capacity of an attorney on the day of the event. And in any case, even if we did have immigration attorneys answering the phones, we wouldn't be giving legal advice over the phone, just general information and referrals. So yes, just make sure you review the script and you stick to that. We'll have it in English and in Spanish, depending on which room you're in. And it's important that you follow the script too, because you establish right from the beginning of the phone call that relationship with the person, that you're not here to give them specifics about whatever their situation is, but instead give them general information like how much does it cost to apply for citizenship. You can look that up and tell someone that, not how does my criminal history affect my eligibility to naturalize, right? So the next step is after you ask, how may I help you? People like to talk, they like to tell lots of stories. When you're listening to them, you want to pick out a few key parts that will help you figure out as quickly as possible what are they actually looking for? Are they looking for help with naturalization because they want to become a citizen and they already have a green card? Are they looking to get a green card? Are they looking for help about raids, about family members abroad? So you try to pick out just the key facts that people are calling about. And write down what are their concerns. Like maybe I have criminal convictions. You don't want to ask about the details of that. You just want to find out, where did it happen maybe, and this is where you can go to get those records that will help you when you actually get an appointment to see someone later on down the road. And you're gonna be using the resources that we have. Again, the training manual, this will be available online as well in a PDF version, and on the tablets that you'll have the day of with all of these. I'll show you in just a minute what the landing page looks like. So you'll get a sneak preview before everyone else because it's not public yet. But the website actually has all these different tabs as like little icons that you can click onto and then find some of this information without having to flip through this book. We also have how to read the visa bulletin. If you remember from this morning talking about family immigration, when people want to bring people over to the country, there's different categories and different waiting times. So we have something that helps you learn how to read that. And then we have links to websites like immigrationlawhelp.org, which you'll learn a lot more about in the next presentation, that'll help you make referrals for people. So providing the information. So after you've listened to someone, you've kind of figured out what they're looking for, what type of case it is, what type of questions they have. Then when you want to provide information, put them on hold first. Give yourself some time. Don't feel pressured to have an answer right away. Don't start stressing out about how long they're on hold. People are just very grateful to get information. They are willing to wait, right? So when you put someone on hold, go to the tablet, start checking through the manual if you need to answer like general questions that you think you can find an answer to. And then if there's something that you're just not sure what they're asking or if it's too complicated, don't forget to always use this, right? Raise your paddle, ask for a supervisor. In the room that you'll be in, we have 2 rooms, one just for Spanish speakers and the other one is multilingual, so in speakers of English and other languages. Each of those will have 4 to 6 supervisors at all times to keep the ratio of supervisors to volunteers as low as possible. And the supervisors will be attorneys and accredited representatives who are experienced in immigration and who will be able to help you with any complicated questions that may come up. Okay? And in each room, I don't know if we mentioned this already, but there's 40 phone lines. So each volunteer per phone line, right? Which is an increase from the past years. How many did we have last year? We had 24 in each room last year, so now we're up to 40 because we're anticipating a large volume of calls this year, which is why it's really important, especially if you are Spanish speakers, to sign up for those shifts. 5 to 8 p.m. we always get the most calls because that's when the ad goes out on Univision and people start calling us a lot. So yeah, the point of this slide is to just never be scared to ask questions. There are no stupid questions. I went over this already. And another thing to keep in mind is how many of you have been to our Saturday events before, our application assistance events? So about a little over half the room. At those events, we have people wear these sashes, like the beauty pageant sashes, to signify that someone is either an event flow person or a supervisor. Those sashes will be coming back for the call-in. So you'll see in the room someone who's wearing a sash. That means they're a supervisor. So you can always flag them down to ask any questions that come up. All right, step 5. This is one of the most important steps from the call that you're going to be providing the caller with is the referral. And we don't want you to just refer them to us, to CUNY Citizenship Now. We have more than enough people that are waiting for our services, and we want to spread the love around to other service providers within the city. And people are going to be calling from all over the country potentially, which is why we're going to use this online resource where you can look up, using someone's zip code, service providers within a certain radius of where they live. So when you use the online resources, you want to make sure that you're giving referrals that are directed. Immigrationlawhelp.org is a great resource that not only gives you service providers within that geographic location, but also breaks down the types of services that each organization provides. So not everywhere will help someone who's in deportation proceedings, for example. We don't really do that at CUNY Citizenship Now. We're a pro se assistance project. We help people affirmatively file applications like for naturalization and other things. So when you're looking on the website, which they'll explain to you in the next presentation, you want to make sure that you're choosing at least 2 to 3 referrals per caller to give them options of places to go that are appropriate for what they're looking for. Let's see. And you want to manage expectations too for the callers. Let them know that just because you're giving them this phone number or this address and a name of an organization That doesn't mean that they're going to get an appointment. It doesn't mean that if they do get an appointment, that the attorneys there will take their case. And it doesn't mean that they're going to get an appointment right away. Places often have long wait times. Everyone has their own intake procedures. So it's very important that you let people know that. And that's why we give them at least 2 to 3 options when they call. And another thing to keep in mind is, organizations change the way they do services. Maybe they have changed the types of services they provide after the last update on the website that we're using. So always keep that in mind as well. So different from previous years, we now have everything available online that you would need. On the tablets, you'll go to a landing page, which I'm going to show you on the next slide, on our website, that has links to every single thing that's in the training manual, that everything that you would need to make a referral and to give people the right information. But you always had the training manual in case of technical issues, or if you just would rather use that instead of trying to use the tablet. All right, this is a screenshot of what the homepage looks like. We're going to show you just really briefly. Again, this is your special preview because this hasn't gone live yet. So this link will be on your tablet when you get to your station during your call-in week shift. Here is before you get started, it's sort of our getting started guide. It'll show you a PDF of how do I operate the phones. With like screenshots, you hit that for headset, or if you're using, what do we call it? I can't remember the name for it. The handset, there we go. How do you transfer a call? One thing that we do at the call-in is we use it to make anyone who calls within the tri-state area who wants help applying for citizenship, we can give them an appointment to come to our citywide event that will be on July 15th. So if you ever get anyone looking for that kind of service, you'll be transferring them to one of our staff members on hand who'll be making appointments for that. So we have instructions about how to do that. We have the training manual, like I was showing you. Each of those tabs is a cute icon here that you can click on to find more information. There's links to the most popular forms from USCIS. Carmen mentioned that you should never have to pay for forms from USCIS. They're all available for free from their website. And the most popular ones we see are like the N400 application for naturalization, the I-90 to replace a green card, an I-912 to request a fee waiver, I-130 relative petition, more information about naturalization. We have other immigration issues here, the immigrationlawhelp.org website, the New York City Bar Association, and the ALA lawyer search. Down here we have how to read the visa bulletin for family-based immigration, Department of State, forms and fees from USCIS, how to get referrals for English and civics classes, the Know Your Rights and preparedness stuff that Carmen was talking about, and this will be in the next presentation as well, this Tools for Immigrant New Yorkers website, and some planning tips. Reporting immigration fraud is a really important one. Here's the phone number that we've been talking about from ONA, the Office of New Americans, run by New York State. People can call there to report scams. The caller survey, not all of you will be asked to do a caller survey, but if you are, it's right here in English and Spanish, just to ask people some demographic information so we can collect data about the calls. And then volunteer bios. If you submit one, again, you have until midnight tonight. We're going to send you a thank you email out after this training with the link again. If you haven't done it, submit your photo and bio so it'll get onto the Daily News website. And it'll be here on our website as well. So, sorry, let me speed it up. All right, again, here's information about our mega event and how to make referrals. Yep, and this was all in the website I just showed you. And yep, yeah, and so the caller survey, we want to get at least 15% of the calls to do this caller survey so we can collect some information and kind of know who's calling us and how we can improve our services for the next year. That link's going to be on the tablet. And then finally, we want to remind you, we'll be right back here at John Jay and the gymnasium on July 15th to do a mega citywide event where we aim to serve between 400 to 500 participants in a day with help with their naturalization applications. It's a really big event. It requires a lot of effort from volunteers, so we want to recruit as many people as possible. And if you want to get more information about that, you should register to be a member of the volunteer corps by going to cuny.edu Citizenship Now /volunteer, and you fill out your information and get on our mailing list, and you'll get more information about not only the citywide event, but all other volunteer opportunities that we have throughout the year. So with that, if you have any questions, make sure to write them on your card, and we'll get back to them in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique and Zach. Just a reminder again, these are sort of, the putting together, how do I actually use the information that you guys gave me in the morning to answer these questions, how far should I go? What does information versus advice even mean? This section is going to help you put into practice everything that we've discussed up until this point. And we have another duet to round out the day. Monique and Zach were the first duet, and the second duet is Michelle, who's the Michelle Bourne, who's the Live Help Coordinator for Law Help New York and CUNY Law grad, and Ken Ramsey, who is the Program Coordinator for the Immigration Advocates Network, and these guys are the technology experts. So they will show you, how to utilize these resources, and please, in the meantime, feel free to use them and to, provide them as information to other people.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Hi, everybody. I didn't pick up a name tag, but I'm Ken Ramsey. I'm the Program Coordinator, Immigration Advocates Network. And I know I'm Ken Ramsey because I have his wallet right here. I've done this like 3 or 4 times the past 3 or 4 years, and it's always like a really, really beautiful day, weather-wise, outside when everybody has to stay inside for the day. So I think that's probably a testament to your dedication to this. So thanks for being here. I'm going to talk about immigration law help, and I'm going to talk about Ian broadly as well. And then Michelle will come up and she'll talk about Law Help New York. So real quick, what is Ian? The Immigration Advocates Network, or Ian, is a collaborative effort of leading immigrants' rights organizations designed to increase access to justice for low-income immigrants and strengthen the capacity of organizations serving them. Ian promotes more effective and efficient communication, collaboration, and services among immigration advocates, providing free, easily accessible, comprehensive online resources and tools. Say that 3 times fast. So when I'm in an elevator, I say that we offer online resources and tools to help immigrants and to help people who are helping immigrants with legal issues. And so very, very happy that CUNY has always asked us to be involved with the call-in and use some of our tools during those events. So one of those tools that we'll talk about today is immigration law help. Now, this is a whole bunch of different Ian sites, and all of them use this online directory, the National Immigration Legal Services Directory. The one that we'll be talking about today, though, is immigrationlawhelp.org. So this directory, just a really quick background, there's like more than 1,000 organizations in here. They're all nonprofit, and they all provide immigration legal services with either attorneys on staff or with accredited representatives on staff. I think we're saying DOJ representatives, but formerly BIA representatives on staff. So we vet these organizations and update their information on an annual basis. Of course, that doesn't mean that their information can't change like literally the next day, but we keep it as up to date and accurate as possible. All the organizations in the directory are free to contact us to also update their their information as it changes. So I said there were over 1,000 organizations in the directory. It's all 50 states, and there are 163 organizations in New York State alone, which actually makes you guys second to California. So, keep up the good work, and maybe you'll be first next year. Okay, so we just took a look at this. Zach just showed it to you. This is the home screen for the tablets, and each of you guys get those tablets. I don't think you get to take them home, but you get to use them for the day, so that's good. That's really cool because this used to be like all paper based. I think there was like a phone book or something. Yeah. So it was huge. So all this stuff is online now, and that's awesome. You guys will have the tablets to utilize like a ton of information. You get the simple home screen, and you'll be able to hop around and find the information that you need. Okay, so I think Zach went through all the different sections, so I'm not going to repeat that. But like I said, you get the real simple home screen. It's a jump-off point. You're going to tap on the relevant section and find what you need. Okay, let's look at immigration law help. All right. Okay, so it looks like, according to what Zach was showing us, is that you can access this information in different sections within the environment on the tablet that you'll be able to use. So it's immigrationlawhelp.org. And I think the easiest way for everyone here to use it at this event is actually to, when you're ready to use it, to ask for the caller's zip code, or the zip code where they're looking for information. And if you look in the upper left corner, you'll see that's the spot to enter the zip code and hit go, and you'll be set. You can also search by detention facility if that, for whatever reason, is relevant. I don't recommend clicking on the states, and I'll tell you why. I mean, in this neck of the woods, it's a hop, skip, and a jump, and you guys are in New Jersey or you're in Connecticut. And searching by state just might be a little bit cumbersome because it's going to create, you're not going to be able to look in New Jersey if you're clicking on New York State, which, right, that makes sense, right? So search by zip code and you're going to get multiple states. All right, and then you get your results. So this has some real basic information for each of the organizations that are in the directory. You're going to get your areas of legal assistance, you're going to get your types of legal assistance, and location and contact. I think this is actually an old slide. It's an old screenshot. So you see up there that DAPA is up there, which is a program that's not happening. So don't think that we're not aware of that. So that's not going to be what you see when you look at the results during the call-in. But you will get a list of all the different organizations that are closest to that zip code that you searched by. And you're also going to get mileage for it too. I think it's the results will tell you this organization is 1 mile away or 2 miles away from the zip code that you searched. So you can really give folks good information, accurate information for organizations that are nearby. I think best practice is to give 2 or 3 information for 2 or 3 different organizations, and that a person calls the first organization, they might get a voicemail, and that voicemail might be full, which happens all the time. So give them 3 organizations, and they're likely to find an organization that can help them. So again, this has all of the areas of legal assistance that an organization provides. Some of them just do naturalization. Some of them just do DACA or whatever. You can drill down a little bit further by scrolling to the bottom of the page. When you get this list of results, scroll to the bottom of the page and click on the plus sign, and you'll be able to see the plus signs on the right side. And you'll be able to check off the different areas of legal assistance that you'd like to search by, and some other things too. Populations served, languages spoken, you see it up here. There's a lot of different areas. You can really refine your search and make it effective. And then you get your new search results, exactly the same. Now you can also click in to these specific results. If you click on the organization's name, you're going to get like 50 points of data on those different organizations. So if you want to go in even further, you can do that. But I think it's, suffice to say, giving them the name of the organization, the location, and the contact information would be really helpful. So phone number and email address. Here's the thing though, all of these, like 163 organizations in New York State, 1,100 organizations across the country, every single one has a unique policy for how they accept new clients or referrals. So please encourage callers that when they reach out to these organizations, it doesn't mean you're in because you've got their phone number. They have their own policies, they have their own capacity to accept new cases and new clients, and so you should just be aware of that and pass that information along. And that's why we give them 3 organizations, right? So they can, if the first one is a bust, they can try the other ones. All right, moving right along. So now, when you're done, you want to search again, you can just go up and click New Search. You could click the Immigration Law Help logo at the top of the page, and you'll get back to that page with the map on it. So anytime you want to get back to the home page, you can click that logo, Immigration Law Help. But from the results, you can just click New Search, and you'll go right back, and you can get started again. That is it on my part. I think I get to come back and do some quiz questions with you nice people in just a second. So, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. Make sure I'm okay. Great. My name is Michelle Bourne, and I work with Law Help New York. Law Help New York is an organization that provides legal information on a range of different civil legal issues that low-income New Yorkers may face. One of them being immigration, but more relevant to today, we recently developed sort of a separate micro-site that we connect to on our basic Law Help New York site, which is lawhelpny.org, which is called Tools for Immigrant New Yorkers. And we developed this in February and March, sort of when the flurry of activity and sort of panic occurred across our nation, obviously as immigration enforcement was scaled up. And so it's important to understand who this site is geared towards. It's really for those who are, the name doesn't imply that, but it's really for those who are at risk of deportation. And we've learned today that unfortunately that seems to be a much larger pool of people than in the past. So those who are undocumented, those whose status may have expired, those who may have green cards but have certain criminal convictions that they fear may make them deportable, et cetera. So I'm hoping that you don't have to give this out to too many people because hopefully many of the people that call actually will be eligible for citizenship and are not concerned about possibly being deported. But the reality is that there will be some people who this will apply to. So I just want to walk through this a little bit. What happened was when this flurry of activity happened earlier this year, a lot of organizations, many of whom have presented to us today, came out with great resources, that Know Your Rights resources, the red card for, to show to law enforcement officers, et cetera. So what we did, many of those resources, legal services were not always the best about providing information in a technologically friendly way. So we have great 3, trifold pamphlets that we hand to the people who walk in our door, but there's obviously many, many people who never walk through our doors. And so Law Help New York tries to fill that gap by providing information through an online medium that people can access even if they never step foot in a legal services office. So Tools for Immigrant New Yorkers is one of those resources, and so we basically did a scan of a lot of the resources that were being produced at that time and tried to pick and choose those which we felt like covered the range of issues that this particular subset of people would be facing, and also those, frankly, that are more amenable to being provided through a web-based mechanism, particularly mobile phones, because more and more people are accessing information through their mobile phones and not a full desktop screen. So you can see hopefully it's self-explanatory, but we've sort of organized the information into three buckets. Well, this first video, I don't think I can point, is just a basic Know Your Rights video produced by the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, and it's the same stuff we've been hearing today, just a different format. We all know that everybody takes in information in different ways. Some people are going to do it through a YouTube video better than they are through reading through, you know, a PDF. So that's, it's going to be a lot of the same stuff that Alan and Carmen talked to us about today. This first column is, we've called Prepare, and I just want to point out the first piece, I'm sorry you can't see it. This is the URL, lawhelpny.org/immigration. And this is what you can provide to people who may be calling. Obviously, you all have this information that is linked to on this site in your manual, but it's not all going to sink in the time that you have with somebody on the telephone. And so if we can give people additionally, in addition to whatever information you're going to be providing them on the phone, this website, they can then go and sort of take in the information at their own pace, hopefully pass it on to friends and family members, etc. So the first, I'm not going to go through all the resources that are linked here, but basically there's one about knowing your rights if you're in touch with ICE, and this one in particular is one that's been created by the Immigrant Defense Project, which does great work, and it's all the same principles that we learned from Carmen and Alan today. The second one is you can click onto a carrier rights card that people could print out from their own computer and make their own little red card if they aren't able to get a physical red card from a great legal service provider. I did want to take some time. Let me see. I want to see if I can click on this. Yes. This picture here is, we call it Create an Emergency Plan. Oh, okay, let's see. That's all right. Let me just click on it again here.
Oh, it's huge.
Yes. It is huge, huh? Okay, so maybe we don't have a live connection. All right, well, that's all right. If you want to check it out on your cell phones, you can. It's hot off the presses. We're working with Legal Aid Society to basically create a dynamic web-based version of some of these recommendations that people like Carmen shared with us today about, you know, getting together your important documents, appointing somebody to be a temporary guardian for your child if you happen to be the sole care provider for your child. I have no idea why that's not live, but that's all right. It will be live on your tablet, so don't worry about it. And actually, if you do click on that, let me get out of this now, there will be a link to that form, the person, form to designate a person in parental relation that then, you know, it takes you through to the Office of Family Court website, but it provides more context and it provides an FAQ about who it's for and what it does, etc. So anyway, we think that that resource currently only exists in English. We're translating into Spanish and fully intend to have it available by the time of the call-in on the 19th. And I also want to point out this middle column we've called Respond, which the first picture will link actually to a CUNY Citizenship Now resource that tells people how to request bond. No, the second one does it. I'm sorry, I can't actually see. Okay. And the third picture down connects to immigration law help. And then this final column over here to connect with advocates provides a lot of the same numbers we've talked about today, the Office for New Americans, where to report scams and immigration fraud. If you are witness to an ICE raid, there's a Legal Aid Society has developed a hotline for that. And then down here, we actually have a calendar that is dynamically updated on a daily basis with events, Know Your Rights events, clinics, events like the call-in, that people can check that out to see if there are events in their borough near them. This is actually it's a statewide resource, so we also list things in other parts of the state. But it's a really great way for people, if they're getting tired of just hanging on the phone line, to go see if there's a legal service provider that's anywhere close to them. It is available in Spanish. The whole site is available in Spanish if you just click on that little toggle up there. And you can either give people like that URL, or you can just tell them to go to lawhelpny.org/immigration and click on the little tab for Spanish. And I think that's it. Thanks.
All right.
So thanks, Michelle. I think we have just a couple minutes so we can do some case studies that we'll go through. So real quickly, what information can you provide to Andre? Andre heard about the call-in from his cousin in Queens. He's calling from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and wants to know if he's eligible for citizenship. So what information can you provide to Andre? Can you explain that this is a New York-based event and you're unable to give him any information? Or, using Andre's zip code, search immigrationlawhelp.org for an organization near him that provides citizenship and naturalization. Oh, this is awesome. Wow, this is really cool. I hadn't... Okay, everybody's got it right. I think. Yeah! All right, good deal. All right, so yeah, using Andre's zip code, search immigrationlawhelp.org, as we just went over, and provide 3 organizations that might be able to serve him. What information can you provide to Christos? Christos thinks he might be eligible to naturalize. He read some information online and said he just needs an attorney to review his situation very briefly. He has the day off tomorrow and wants to drop in and talk to someone. What information can you provide? Explain that you can give him information, organizations near him, but he will have to contact them to find out their appointment availability, or put Christos on hold while you call 3 organizations near him to see if there are any available appointments tomorrow. Okay, all right, so the answer is this one, yes. Explain that you can give him information, but he's going to have to contact those organizations on his own. And they all have their own policies about accepting new clients. So I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to sound like a broken record. Okay. Yeah, okay. What information can you provide to Guillermo? Guillermo was recently screened at an immigration clinic where he was told he's not eligible for any immigration benefits. He wants to know if there's anything he can do if he comes in contact with ICE. So, tell him there's nothing he can do, but hope he never comes into contact with ICE. Or suggest he check out Know Your Rights information on the Tools for Immigrant New Yorkers page, especially the Know What to Do If ICE Stops You and Carry a Rights Card sections. Awesome. Everybody in this room is really smart. There it is. Oh, don't forget to provide him information from the training manual too. Where's the training? Right here. This is nice. This is really nice. Can I have a copy as well? All right, cool. What information can you provide to Daniele? Daniele is undocumented, but she heard from a coworker that she may be eligible for some form of immigration relief. She just doesn't know how to find reliable info. Okay, using her zip code and immigrationlawhelp.org, find an organization near her. Or refer her to IMMI.org, a new site that conducts a free and anonymous immigration screening, which is also made by my company. So you can refer her to organizations near her using immigrationlawhelp.org, but I got to put in a plug for IMMI.org as well. Check it out if you have a couple minutes. I think that's it. Final tips. Okay, so make sure you tap on the correct section on the main menu. So that speaks for itself. The fastest way to find organizations is by entering the caller's zip code into immigrationlawhelp.org. Like I said, if you click on state, you're just going to get state, and you're not going to cross into New Jersey or Connecticut. And here's the other thing too. My understanding is that folks who are calling in may actually be not in the tri-state area. They could be calling from wherever in the country. So immigrationlawhelp.org covers wherever. It covers 50 different states, so as well as DC. So you can provide that information that way just by searching by zip code. Policy and procedures for each organization are different, and some have waiting lists. The services they provide might change. Appointments might not be immediately available. So that's the broken record part I keep talking about. Give the caller info for at least 3 different orgs in their area, organizations in their area. And if you have a question, raise your hand and talk with a supervisor, and then enjoy the experience, because it's fun to help people, and you guys are all really awesome for doing it. So thanks a lot. I'm done. All right.
Thank you so much to our lovely partners at Ian, immigrationlawhelp.org and Law Help New York. You guys are the best. Thank you for doing what you do and keeping information all in one place. And you can look at it on your phone, you can look at it anywhere, you can tell people, go to this website, it's nice and easy. So, how many people feel just a little bit overwhelmed by all of the information? That's totally normal. We are going to try to wrap up everything that we learned today into a bow, if possible. We're going to answer some of the questions we didn't get a chance to answer in the morning. If you still have a question that you'd like to ask, you can see Jennifer in the back for a blank card, and she'll run it up front to Zach and Monique. We're going to ask our panelists questions, and I want to introduce our panelists to you. We have Tom Shea, who you may remember from his appearance this morning, very briefly. He's a supervising attorney at our CUNY Express Immigration Center. Next to him, we have Wilfred Zamora, who's a staff attorney with our city council services. He's at 2 billion different offices around the city during the day, and he also helps out with our national initiative. We have Stephanie Delia, who's the supervising attorney at the City College Immigration Center, one of our longest, oldest immigration centers. And we have Abogada Carmen Ray, who stuck around to be with us and to answer questions because she's crazy like that. So without further ado, let me mention, I'm sorry, we are going to talk about the afternoon topics and any topic, any questions you have. If it's a procedural question, that's fine too. If you are listening at home or your office, you can send questions to our Facebook page at CUNY Citizenship Now or via Twitter at CUNY Citizenship. You can use the hashtag Citizenship Now, or you can email questions to cunycitizenshipnow@gmail. The prompts are up here too. And let's get started with our esteemed panelists.
Alrighty, Carmen. Why does it help to have been here for 2 years? And do you have a right to have a phone call? I'm sure this is about an undocumented person.
Do you have a right to have a phone call? Not in the criminal way that you have a right to have a phone call. They may allow you to make a phone call, but you don't automatically have the right to do so, unless it's to call an attorney, I think. I actually don't think there's a specific case law on that, but I'm happy to take a look and get back to you guys.
So why does it help to have to been here 2 years?
So that's actually a really good question. So you guys remember back an hour and a half ago that I said that we were concerned about the government expanding a set of laws that has been on the books since 1997, but that the government had interpreted very narrowly until now. So it's about expedited removal. We're concerned, lawyers around the country are concerned that the government is going to expand this program that right now they're only using at the borders, where they take someone who cannot prove that they've been in the United States for a certain period and subject them to a deportation process that's very, very simple and that does not give them access to a judge. And so that's why we want people to at least be able to get before an immigration judge, which they would only be able to do if they expand this program, which they haven't done yet. But if they expand this program, they would only be able to do if they can establish they've been in the country for 2 years or more. That makes sense? Okay.
All right, next question. When ICE places someone or a couple in removal proceedings, what happens to their younger infant U.S. citizen children? Can ICE compel the removal of the U.S. citizen children?
Toughie. U.S. citizens cannot be subject to removal, but the practical effect might be if the parents are both undocumented and they could be ordered deported from the United States, they might take their children with them, their U.S. citizen children with them. Or the U.S. citizen children might end up in foster care, or the U.S. citizen children might end up with other family members or close family friends. in the United States.
And for that reason, it was important. I think Carmen covered the preparation that you do in advance, and especially in this current unique political immigration environment, that you do take in advance to ensure what happens to your children should the worst possible scenario occur.
Right.
Are there any grounds upon which individual citizenship can be revoked?
Want to take it?
So yes, there's actually a really interesting case that's up before the Supreme Court right now, where the government alleged that even an inadvertent misrepresentation on an application for citizenship or for some immigration relief could be basis for the government to revoke your citizenship at any time after you obtained it, which made us all quake in fear because, you know, we all make mistakes. And it was actually really interesting because the Supreme Court responded back to the arguments by the government by saying, I think it was as Judge Sotomayor that said something like, so you mean every time I lie about my weight, I could potentially, and the government was like, yeah. That's actually exactly what we're arguing. So yes, there is a basis, and generally it's either it's that you made a misrepresentation in the course of applying for immigration relief. That's why, by the way, we always look at cases so carefully when someone comes to apply for citizenship and they have marriages. For example, they have a marriage, then they have a quick divorce, a quick remarriage, and then they divorce that person. They marry that first person again, or they have children in the course of an existing marriage with someone else. So we're looking at immigration fraud. We're trying to issue spot whether the government may have cause to move to take that person's status away, or that could be a problem for them in the future. But there are, in fact, denaturalization units at U.S. attorneys' offices that work to do this.
All right, next question is about your rights during an interaction with an immigration officer. If you choose to remain silent, do they have the right to take you to jail?
Okay, so I'll take this one. So you always have the right to remain silent when you come into contact with law enforcement, and ICE is, in fact, law enforcement officers. Louder. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. So what I stated before is that you always have the right to remain silent when you come into contact with law enforcement, including ICE. That being said, if they have proper warrants, then they will be able to arrest you. But when you do come into contact with ICE or any other law enforcement, you should actually remain silent and not give them any information.
Because that information can be used against you, right? We have a maxim, defense attorneys have this maxim. We say, the fish got caught because he opened his mouth. Right? Keep that in mind. That's a really good one. Just keep your mouth shut. They need probable cause to arrest.
I've heard it before.
Listen, I taught you something. I just won today.
Upon entering at the airport, can you refuse access to your cell phone or other devices?
Is this on? This on? Yes. Okay. Can you refuse? You can try. But CBP is there we go. You can try, but CBP does reserve the right to look at all your devices. If you refuse, they could potentially confiscate your device.
Yeah.
Can you be denied admission?
Oh, denied admission on the basis of it. If you're a U.S. citizen, you cannot be denied admission, but you can have your device confiscated. For an LPR, it could become a little bit more problematic.
Right. So they can, for an LPR, for example, they can try to issue you a notice to appear. They can confiscate the device, let you into the country, issue you a notice to appear. They'd have to have cause for it. But it is an escalation, right? So it really depends. It has to be a case-by-case determination by every person to decide whether or not they can make that escalation. Like, I dare them to do that because I want that escalation. It's the one way I get out my aggression against the government. I don't know that a non-immigrant, I would certainly not advise them to escalate. I would advise them to travel with a burner.
Right. And of course, you run the risk of taking into secondary, basically being delayed. They're going to be, CBP is within their right to not let you through until they're perfectly satisfied that you are who they say that you are and they have the information that they're looking for.
All right, so another question about ICE. Does ICE or the police recognize the New York City ID card, which is issued by the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, as valid identification?
Yes.
Yes, because so the New York City ID card is valid ID here within the city of New York. As a result, ICE also respects it as valid ID within the city of New York. So yes, you can show that as valid ID, and it's actually preferable, I think as Carmen went through it earlier, it's preferable to show that rather than walk around with your birth country ID or passport. Because again, by carrying that kind of documentation, you're again making the case for ICE that you have no legal right to be in the United States.
And can you just clarify for us, I'm sorry, if you travel with a New York City ID, is that appropriate or acceptable ID for like TSA or any other organization who's asking for state ID?
No. So I would say this: that ID was issued by the city of New York, and I put it to you guys this way so it's easier to remember. Because it was issued by the city of New York, it's best to be used in New York. When you're to use it to travel, for example, to cross borders, that is not a valid form of ID. And one of our, when that program first came out, at least CUNY and all the nonprofits here in New York City went out of their way to make sure to inform people, because for the immigrant community thought, wow, look, I finally got a form of ID, maybe I can travel now, to try to dissuade them from the notion that this is a document that you could be used to travel. It is not. It is just a document that can be used to show your ID within the 5 boroughs that comprise New York City.
I love this question. For the call-in, I'm worried about giving information and not advice. Is it okay if I ask the question like, what is your birth date? Or when did you get your green card? And can you give an example of what is legal advice?
Okay, lawyers, go for it.
I would say the following. So, facts, right? So, for example, you guys learned one of the language exemptions is like 50 years of age with 20 years of residency. That's a fact, right? Someone's name is a fact. Someone's date of birth is a fact. So information is reiterating those facts, right? When you keep the facts are general, they're not specifically applied to anything. They're just facts. So the danger comes when you start applying those facts to that person's or that caller's specific case. When you start applying facts to that caller's specific case, when you start trying to see, well, these are the facts and how does this fit to your case, that's when you're starting to give advice. So again, the purpose of this is to give information. So follow, you guys will have those manuals that were given out today. Those will be available for you at the call-in. You're giving out information. You're giving out facts like the 50-20 rule. You're giving out facts like you have to be an LPR before you can, or lawful permanent resident before you apply for citizenship. Those are absolute, undeniable facts that apply generally and universally. When you start applying, well, how does this apply to my aunt who's in Ecuador? Then you're starting to give advice.
So generally, a very common question that comes up at the call-in is, can I apply for naturalization? And you can provide general information, as Will was just saying, about the basic eligibility requirements for naturalization. I mean, you wouldn't be getting into say, yes, you are eligible. Then you can get into providing referral information, and we could provide you information to these 3 organizations that can help you determine whether or not you can file an application for naturalization. Mm-hmm. So providing eligibility requirements, like the information that you get out of our manual, conveying that to the caller is general information, without getting into legal advice.
Great. I'm going to combine 2 questions here that are similar. So can you go over one more time what's the difference between the ICE and judicial warrant? And then once someone denies ICE entry to their home, can't they just go back and argue for a judicial warrant? Isn't that just delaying the inevitable as well as indicating that the suspect is indeed undocumented?
Can I just say, I think it's a great move for them to request to see a judicial warrant. I mean, it may not be delaying the inevitable. I mean, they very often ICE doesn't have a judicial warrant and they're not going to go get one. So I don't think it's delaying the inevitable. I think that they should stand up. Each person should stand up for their rights, and if they have the right to see a judicial warrant, they should ask for it.
Right. And then the other thing is what are you doing by denying them entry for lack of having a judicial? You're buying yourself time, right? You can call an attorney, you can start making plans. It's not the ideal situation to be in, but at least it buys you some time. So I don't see it as a bad move at all.
Yeah, and then just one more time, the difference between judicial versus ICE warrant.
So generally, ICE warrants are maximum 2 pages, and they're signed by a supervisory immigration officer, and they cite to the Immigration and Nationality Act at the top. So it's INA X, and it's just a form. It's signed by an immigration officer. A judicial warrant is different. It can be on 1 page or multiple pages, generally a seal, and it's signed by a judge. So it'll say HON period and the name of the judge. It'll cite to the court, and it will have a case docket. So it'll say people versus then your name, and then the judge will sign it.
Can you just repeat the statistic that you gave during your presentation about the number of judicial warrants issued?
What the city had told us last year, and I'm working from memory, so people are going to cite this back to me and say, you're wrong. I remember that at a meeting with city officials, we asked, how many people have you handed over on judicial warrants? And they said, we've been presented with 3 judicial warrants in the last year. But they detained thousands and thousands of people. So, 3 judicial warrants. The reason why they're not going out and getting judicial warrants on cases is that it's incredibly time consuming, not only for them, but for the court. Also, the standard is quite high. You have to meet a standard in order to get a judge to issue you a warrant. That's there in order to prevent law enforcement from just engaging in fishing expeditions, right? So that's...
This is my first year participating in the call-in, and I'm overwhelmed by all of the information that I've gotten at the training. Is there any advice you can offer that I can be prepared on Monday in the next 2 weeks?
I was going to say the first thing is to give them the date, which is June 19th. Do not come here on Monday, and you can hang out. I'm sure John Jay would be happy to host you, but the call-in is not until June 19th, number 1. Check your email.
And number 2, you have the manuals. Those manuals are a valuable resource to you, and they're going to cover the majority of the questions that you're going to get at the day of the call-in. The other thing, for those of you who haven't participated at the call-in, is we have attorneys walking all around the room. You are not going to be, so if you're thinking this is sort of some image of a call center where you guys are locked in some room and nobody is, that is not happening. There's attorneys walking around, several attorneys walking around. Usually there's an attorney for at least one attorney for each row of phones at this event. So you guys, those same paddles that you've been using to answer questions here at for the quizzes, those same paddles will be available for you at the event. And the one with the red question mark is the one that you're going to raise. An attorney will come to you forthwith, right away. And
sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 attorneys.
What?
Who are really happy to answer your questions.
And we're really happy to answer your questions.
Answering your questions.
Yeah. Your questions, and if you get something that's maybe not covered in the manual and the caller asks about it, again, another one of the reasons why attorneys will be roving all over. You won't have to go too far to find an attorney in the room that you're in.
And can I add to that? Don't feel stressed or the anxiety of that you have to have an answer right away as soon as you answer that phone and they ask the question. You can take them out. You can look in the manual, take a moment, you can put people on hold and go through. And if you're not finding the answer, raise that paddle and speak with the supervisor. We are happy to answer your questions. We're happy to help you to be able to provide the information to the caller.
All right, I really like this question because I think it'll be one that all of you may potentially get when you call. So if I've lived in New York for the last 19 years and I've had minor run-ins with the law, where do I go to get my criminal records?
Okay, so the answer is it depends. The first step is always you go back. Well, it depends on what the arrest was for. Oftentimes, we advise people to go back to the court to get their records. If there's a warrant out for your arrest, then you should be going to a nonprofit organization who can assist you with getting those records, and they do exist. And I'm pretty confident we'll have that information at the call-in. Okay, good. So we'll have that information for you at the call-in. If it's for a minor arrest, if you're confident there is no warrant for your arrest, then you go directly back to the court in the borough where the arrest and the issue occurred, and you get it from there. If it's criminal, it'll be in criminal court. Sometimes people need to get certificates for things that may have happened in the subway, so you may have to go to the MTA instead. And if it's in another state, you could also do a federal request.
And you can do a federal request, and it's also often people have no idea what their criminal background is, and in those cases, sometimes we'll send them to, if we think there were convictions and there was no open warrant, and that's important, no open warrant, we'll send them into NYPD to do a good moral conduct certificate, which is $50, but it gives you the entirety of your history in New York. There's a way to do it statewide. Office of Criminal Justice Services, you can file and they'll give you a written record of all of your arrests in New York. And then often we'll also do just an FBI fingerprint check. There's a way to do it electronically now. The results come back in 2 weeks and it costs $18, and they'll give you a record of all of your convictions across the United States.
And can I also add tab 10 in your manual for information guidance on how to, information provide on how to get criminal information.
And that'll also be on your tablets and the website that I showed you.
If Jose is a green card holder, but his mother and stepfather who live in the U.S. are undocumented, is there any way that Jose can help his mother change her status?
So Jose is a green card holder, and he wants to help his mother, right? A parent. You guys went over this morning, right? Can a green card holder petition for a parent? No. So can a U.S. citizen do that? Yes. So one of the ways to help is that Jose, in this example, would naturalize, become a U.S. citizen. And once become a U.S. citizen, it enables him to petition. Now, depending on the history of the mother and how she's undocumented, whether she entered validly into the United States or whether what you guys probably went over, EWI, entered without inspection, then the process changes. But nothing happens until that first step, and that first step is for Jose to naturalize.
All right. In regards to Haitian TPS, can you give an example of someone who is Haitian with TPS and they travel abroad with advanced parole, how that provides them a path to a green card?
Okay.
So it touches. Oh.
No, you should.
Okay, I'm just going to start talking. They'll interrupt me. Okay, so the reason why it provides a path to a green card is because all adjustment, generally, so there's one main way that you get a green card in the United States. It's one portion of the statute. And that portion of the statute requires that you be able to show that you enter the United States lawfully. So that your last entry to the United States was either because you were admitted, you were granted the right to enter, or you were paroled into the country, right? So what we are able to do if someone has TPS and exits and then re-enters under parole is that we can demonstrate that their last entry, whatever their original entry is, it's irrelevant for us for purposes of getting their green card. For the green card, we only have to prove their last entry. And suddenly their last entry is lawful because they traveled pursuant to a document that the government issued them that allowed them to exit and be paroled back into the country. Does that make sense to folks?
And by the way, the same applies to DACA. DACA has the same, if you have a lawful entry under DACA, it's the same process.
In
terms of the re-entry.
And on the DACA front, you're right. On the TPS front, there's some question about like unlawful work and unlawful travel. Is that going to be a problem that would then prevent them, even if they travel in advanced parole, to be able to adjust in the United States? But that's a little deeper than we went on the question. For purposes of travel, if they have a reason to have to travel out of the United States and they got themselves an advanced parole document prior to travel and then they were paroled into the country, we show that document, we show the stamp on their passport, we're good.
And just one quick thing for Haitian TPS. All of this only applies if you EWI'd. So if you do have Haitian TPS and you entered lawfully and just overstayed, which is a vast majority, you do not need to travel. Now you should because, you can, and it's a way to travel, but you don't need to do it in order to adjust status. You only need to travel with advanced parole if you have Haitian TPS, if the initial entry was unlawful, and that will allow you to cure it. So.
Is it true that someone that is in the process of applying for permanent residence here in the United States have to leave the country to receive their residence in their native country?
No.
There's a caveat.
Yeah.
It's a trick question.
So I guess it depends. There is such a thing called the 3 and the 10-year bar. And so there are circumstances where a person who enters lawfully but overstays by either 6 months or 1 year. Well, between 6 months and 1 year, or 1 year and above. If, for instance, you entered lawfully, but you remained in this country 6 months beyond the time that you were supposed to be here, and then someone is able to petition for you, and you are not an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, you may be required to leave the country, the United States, to go to your home country, and I think under circumstances, another country, period, so that you can do the interview at the consulate there. Once you leave, there's a 3-year bar that will officially go into effect, and so there are waivers that are available for it, but under those circumstances, you may be forced to leave and you may be stuck out of the country for 3 years or 10 years if you remain in this country for a year or more without permission. There are waivers, so once you're out of the country, you could apply. But if you're not a spouse of a U.S. citizen or a child under 18 of a U.S. citizen or a parent of a U.S. citizen, you're not an immediate relative, and consequently, if someone else is petitioning for you, which usually will be a sibling, you may be stuck with this 3 or 10-year bar, and you will have to leave the country.
So generally, the best answer to that is that person should really talk to an attorney.
Yes.
I just want to point out also, we went into it super surface level this morning with Camille, but if you read chapters 4 and 5 in the training manual, it'll give you a little bit more information about all of the things we were talking about just now: unlawful presence, consular processing, adjustment of status, all of those buzzwords you just heard. It's something that you could spend 2 or 3 days on by themselves. And just another reminder, if you guys still have questions, raise your hand for a blank card and someone will come bring you one.
Okay, next
and also
question.
collect your questions.
Next question. If someone encounters an immigration officer while crossing the border, how do they know if they have an order of deportation? And if there is an order of deportation, is there any hope?
So to find out if there's an order of deportation, I think you went over the hotline?
Yeah, so it's not, so first thing is that there isn't always an order of deportation. For one, prior to 1997, there was no expedited removal. So those people likely don't have orders of deportation unless they remember going before a judge. There are bilateral agreements by which people are just returned to Mexico in certain cases without a removal order, although increasingly there are removal orders in their record. We do 2 things. If you have the alien number, that 9-digit identification number for the person, there's a hotline, which I should remember off the top of my head, but I don't. I'm sure it's in the manual. If you don't have the alien number for the person, which in most cases you don't, because if you have their alien number, the person knows that there was a removal order. So if you don't have it, there are Freedom of Information Act requests that can be filed for the individual. There's one in particular, the OBIM. FOIA kind of gives us back the results of every entry into the United States. Also, we file FOIAs with Customs and Border Protection to see if they entered expedited removal orders. And then we file FOIAs with the Immigration Court to see if the Immigration Court has any record of the alien. But initially, in order to get an alien number, we often, in my office, we fingerprint everybody and we do FBI background checks for everybody, because if there is a deportation order or an expedited removal order, that person has been entered into the FBI database. So they have an identity in the database, so their fingerprints will pull up their identity and their removal order.
And we do also at tab 10, in the manual, we do have information about Freedom of Information. Just want to make sure you all...
Plug the manual. For training purposes, as a call center rep, will we be answering specific questions as the ones asked, or will we be mostly referring callers to the appropriate referral sources?
So, well, that comes down to the no advice, just information. To the extent that the person tells you, based on what the person tells you, you determine that they may be eligible for some benefit, you should be referring them to 3 locations. If they're calling for standard basic information, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it is absolutely possible that at the end of a call you won't need to refer a call out. But if the person may or may not be eligible, even if you're positive that they are, you should be referring them to an organization that will then screen them and make the final determination.
Okay, great. I am a Muslim lawful permanent resident from Pakistan. I'm worried about traveling to Pakistan and about my family traveling here. Can the travel ban come back at any time? Will Pakistan be added to the ban?
Yeah, Pakistan is currently not one of the 6 countries under the ban. We do not know at this time if it's going to be added to the ban later on. So people from Pakistan, if they have a visa to travel back and forth between Pakistan and the United States, they should feel free to. But we can't say at this point whether the Trump administration is going to add Pakistan to that list of 6 other countries that are. Right.
And what do you tell a caller who asks you, is the travel ban going to come back?
Right now, it is not in effect. The courts have upheld the bar against the, the injunction against the Muslim ban. So I think we should go with that. That's the information we should provide. I don't want to perpetuate fear or rumors. Just say the injunction has been upheld by the courts.
Alrighty. Does an adoptive child become a citizen after being adopted by U.S. parents?
Possibly. So for adoptions, there are specific requirements in order for a person to be able to, USCIS and the Department of Homeland Security has specific requirements that every adoption must meet. Now, to the extent that the adoption does meet those requirements, then, and the person was under 18 at the time they were adopted, came into the country, lived with the person, and meets all the other requirements, you will be able to derive citizenship. So the general answer is yes, but there are additional requirements for adoptions that do not apply for natural-born children. That's all.
All right. For a sibling I-130 application, how do you prove someone is your sibling if the parent in common is the father and he is not listed on either birth certificate?
DNA or blood test?
DNA, blood test. Blood test will do it. That's pretty definitive.
And there's a list of designated agencies that can run blood tests that the government kind of trusts that you can provide those DNA results. We do it all the time. Mostly, in some countries you can have anyone added to your birth certificate as your parent, and so cases out of El Salvador, for example, we do DNA tests pretty routinely. They cost about $900.
You guys affirmatively do the DNA test for them. You don't wait for it to be requested.
Well, so there are cases, for example, we do a lot of derivative cases where my client I know is the mother or father of the child, but they're not on the birth certificate because my client's parents, for example, put themselves as the child's father, as the child's parents on the birth certificate because my client was very young at the time she had the children and was unmarried, and it would have been a shame on the family. So in those cases, we have to provide DNA tests results in order to even meet the basic requirements to have the case accepted by immigration. So in those cases, we do proactively do them. In cases abroad, when there's consular processing involved, in those cases you have to wait for the consulate to ask for DNA results before you can provide them.
This question is about the TPS extension and whether or not someone would be able to get a green card after the 6-month extension. I think that's the question.
So it depends. Okay, so I'm sure everybody in this room, I missed some of the morning, but we discussed the 6-month extension and 60 days to perfect, great. So TPS will be valid for those 6 months. So it is possible to have TPS and remain eligible for to receive a green card as a beneficiary after the TPS expires. To the extent that is your condition, then you're fine. Those people are the people who entered lawfully and they're an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen. They're going to be able to get the green card and adjust their status despite the TPS. For those people who entered unlawfully, for this next 6-month period, it should be the time that you try to use advanced parole to enter lawfully, so that you will actually be able to get the green card after the TPS expires. And so I guess that's it in a nutshell. If you have a problem with your entry, you have 6 months to cure it while the TPS is still valid. If you don't have a problem with your entry, then having TPS is not going to make it better or worse, per se. You could still adjust status whether you have TPS or not.
We have only a few minutes left, so we'll take maybe 2 more questions.
All right. How can someone prove custody by a U.S. citizen parent for showing derivation of citizenship if that USC parent is no longer around or uncooperative?
So there, it becomes a document search, right? You need, so one of the ways, when I'm sitting in an office and a participant asks a question like this, I sort of reason it out with them. So what documents could I've generated to show that I have, that my father or my mother were in fact my father and my mother? So one of the things that, and you got to dig deep. Some of them go back to taxes, go back to school records. Mm-hmm. School records will show, usually, my transcript will show who my custodial parent was, and the address would match. But it's essentially going deep into documents.
Mm-hmm. Might be medical records or hospital records that identify the parents and the child.
Insurance records.
Yeah,
insurance records. Like I was a beneficiary on my father's policy at some point.
U.S. Census records.
Mm-hmm. If someone submitted a petition and someone submitted an application and the petitioner passed away, what is the status of the case?
So there is a law that says upon the death of the petitioner, the application dies with the petitioner. However, it can be revived if the beneficiary can get someone else to step into the shoes of the petitioner. You will also have to get someone else who's going to meet the income requirement. If the petitioner did, and whoever's stepping into the shoes of the petitioner, that person may have to also meet the income requirements. You might have to get another sponsor. There is a deadline. I think it's 2 years. Mm-hmm. Yes? Good. Okay, so yes, it is 2 years. So long as you get the, it's called a widower petition. It's not a widower. It's the same form of the widower. But in essence, there's a form that you submit, and you can revive it.
Right.
Yeah. So technically it dies, but it could be revised.
And for, in certain cases, for VAWA self-petitioners, they get to self-petition despite the death of their abuser.
Yeah.
I think we are going to wrap up for the day. Please join me in thanking these guys.
Last question. It's related to your slide.
These guys are excellent explainers. Please feel free to ask them your questions during the call-in. Yes, Monique?
Will there be a training for the July 15th event? And is there a website that we can register?
Of course.
We will be sending out that information very soon.
The date you'll receive the information to register to the event is going to be a little bit closer to the July 15th event itself. We look forward to seeing you at the call-in. Please return your name tags and your paddles. And have a great evening. Thank you again for being a part of this with us. Exit to your left, please.
Like maybe email them to everybody?
No, some of them are.
Exit to my left? Oh, your left. I'm sorry.
If you want me to connect you with one of the attorneys right now. TPS?
Yeah. Make sure that we're on the same page.
Listening
and pregnant, almost at the very end during the hopefully this will be